welcome into another giant overreaction. I'm your host, Authentic. Big shout out to the gang one time in the building, man. I see y'all out here bright and early. I see my homie Toxic Tom already putting out the good vibes one time. He said, not even a Giants fan. Yes, there is hope, LOL, man. I hope you are definitely correct on that one. From your lips to God's ears, as they will say, man. Welcome into another edition of the Giant Overreaction, the rawest, realest Giants content all over the internets one time. Yesterday, I got to actually see Drake May in person going up against the Washington Commanders, man. That was definitely a delight to see that kid in the pocket. He's looking really good, and as a Giants fan, feeling some type of way, man. Shout out to rich homie Quan one time, because that dude was definitely wheeling and dealing from the pocket. We got about 2 weeks now before the Giants, not only home opener, but season opener to start the year up against the Minnesota Vikings. So we are right here. I feel like this 2 weeks is going to take longer than the entire offseason did. I was talking to the homie Stan about that just a little while ago through text. Now, I'm very happy to put this preseason finale behind me because, man, that was an ugly game. Let's just keep it funky here. That game was, I understand it's preseason, a lot of third stringers, a lot of fourth stringers, a lot of guys who are going to be cut from the roster. It was some ugly football played on Saturday up against the Jets. The Giants end up losing that one 10-3. We briefly going to talk about that game. No starters for each team. Just want to talk about a couple of things that I wanted to see in that game that a lot of these boxes were not checked. I wanted to see better play out of the secondary. I wanted to see Tommy DeVito look more decisive going into his second year. Don't take sacks. We saw what happened in that game. I wanted to see him take some shots, not take sacks. And I wanted to see the protection up front, especially from a depth perspective, because we know the starters were not in this game outside of one guy. But from a depth perspective, I just wanted to see the offensive line continue to build off the foundation that we saw from the first unit in the game against the Houston Texans, where they only allowed one pressure, and that was not the case in this one. I also wanted to see a standout performance from one of the wide receivers, and we really didn't get that. I want to say Jack Stahl was the leading pass catcher for the Giants all the way up until about the end of the game. I didn't even go back to check at the box score because it just was pathetic football being played, especially throughout that first half. And I wanted to see the Giants take care of the ball. And I'd say they sort of kind of did that outside of what happened on the opening kickoff and whatnot. And most importantly, I wanted the guys to stay healthy. And we left this game with a ton of injuries, like a ton of injuries. And we're definitely going to talk about that a little bit here because the Giants went out there and they started no starters except John Michael Schmitz. And he ends up getting his leg rolled over, his ankle rolled over, comes off the field. They're looking at his cleat. He's kind of like, having attention from the medical staff and all this stuff. And they gave us the word that everything is going to be okay on the front of John Michael Schmitz. But we've seen this kind of happen before where it seems like an injury is not really a big thing. We saw that with Neal, and then he was misdiagnosed with what they thought was an ankle sprain. It ended up being a fracture in his ankle. We saw it with Drew Lock just 2 preseason games ago where on air, Joe Shane was in the box talking with the broadcasters and said, yeah, if he had to go back in the game, he'd be all right. And now we're still looking at Drew Lock as a guy who's dealing with injuries going into week 1 with the hip injury right now. And we cannot afford to lose a guy like JMS. That's definitely something that cannot go down. There were plenty of injuries in this game, but let's just it's not even much to talk about with this game, but let's just briefly go over what happened here. Opening kickoff gets fumbled by Amir Asante. He was one of the players that was cut this week as well. Timmy Horn on the first play from scrimmage after that ends up tearing his Achilles. He's out for the year. The Jets ran the ball all over us all night, like literally right through the teeth of the Giants defense. They kind of cleaned it up a little bit in the second half. I did like that the Giants held them to a field goal on that first drive because the way they were just walking down the field, I thought for sure it was going to be a touchdown. They ended up going up 3-0. They also got another touchdown on the board. It came from running back Izzy Abanaconda, 45-yard, huge run. I mean, I know that these guys are depth guys and guys that might not even be on the team. But even dating back to what we saw against the Houston Texans, I think the Giants, you can worry about what's going to happen against the run a little bit until we get some further evidence that we shouldn't worry anymore. Couple of made field goals. Couple of missed field goals, game over 10-6. The Jets win it. It definitely was a better half by the New York Giants, especially from the defensive line front. A few TFLs, few sacks. It just, seeing Tommy DeVito out there, man, I just want the Giants to be able to address the quarterback position. Our quarterback room is definitely in trouble. And we're going to talk about that when we get to the Giant overreaction a little bit here. But big shout out to everybody, man, that's in the building, man. Appreciate all of y'all pulling up. Recapping this game here. The Giants take the L to the Jets. 10-6 in this one. A couple of players that did shine in this game. I thought the Giants did a really good job of running the ball themselves. They did have issues stopping the run, but you could tell, especially in the first half, Brian Daboll was absolutely committed to running the ball. And Dante Miller, Turbo, he touched the ball on 5 of the first 6 plays. He ended the day with 14 rushes for 45 yards. It's not that great of a average 3.2 yards per carry. It's good enough, right? Like, if you can get 3 of those, you'll have a 4th and short, and I think you can put yourself into a manageable situation on 3rd down, but you want to see that yards per carry go up a little bit. Joshua Kelly had a pretty nice day on the ground as well, too. He had that big 19-yard run, 3 rushes for 27 yards in the first half, and then he ended the day with 8 rushes for 40 yards, averaging 5 yards per carry. And, you know, the word came out when they talked about these initial cuts that just happened. I saw the reports from Art Stapleton, and Joshua Kelly was one of the guys that got cut. And I thought they were going to maybe wait a little bit longer before they made that decision, but maybe that is kind of trending towards Dante Turbo Miller being a guy that might make the roster if the Giants indeed decide to take or keep 4 running backs on the roster. I think it's either going to be 4 running backs or 7 wide receivers. They're probably going to have a decision to make there. And the wide receiver room outside of the big 3, big 4 that we have, I do think there's a couple of question marks. I think Isaiah McKenzie might be a guy that's going to make the roster. He looked pretty good on punt returns in this game, outside of the one that he muffed. I think guys like Isaiah Hodgins, Allen Robinson, a few others, you know, it's looking very dicey if any of those guys are going to make the squad. But there'll probably be room for just one more outside of the big 4 with Darius Slayton, Malik Neighbors, Jalen Hyatt, and Wan'Dale Robinson. I think there'll be room for probably 2 or 3 more, and I think Isaiah McKenzie's probably got one of those spots on lock with Gunnar Olszewski dealing with that injury. Now, defensively, the 2 guys that stood out for me was the inside linebacker, and when the cuts were announced, I was, you know, pretty delighted to see that his name was not on the list. Inside linebacker, KJ Lloyd, he was all over the field all night. He had 11 tackles, super high energy guy. Just everywhere where the ball was, you saw this guy making plays. And he was a guy that was like really off my radar. Like, I really hadn't even really heard of his name until that preseason game. And those are the kind of players you get to watch in these last preseason finale type of games. But, you know, it's hard to gauge how that would look if you're going up against, you know, starting caliber players on the field. And in this one, we saw what it was. Timon Fox also had a really good game, 3 tackles, 2 TFLs, and 1 sack. And 2 players that really stood out for me, and a lot of people actually on Giants Twitter, I've been seeing this going around. Shout out to Raina one time, who's in our group thread. She brought this up and showed a graphic about it. But 2 undrafted free agent pass rushers were causing problems for the Giants all night. One of them was Eric Watts out of UConn. He had a half a sack on the day, was putting pressure all over Tommy DeVito the entire game. And the more impressive one was Leonard Taylor III out of Miami. 4 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 1 TFL. And these are guys that you're not even getting through the draft. They're guys that were undrafted, that you're finding talent like that. And I think that when you look at this Joe Schoen tenure, those are the kind of things that we really have not seen. I think Jason Pinnock was one. I believe Jason Pinnock was 2022. And I believe right when he was waived by the Jets, the Giants did scoop him up. So that's one that you could put in that kind of category. But when it comes to the drafts, when it comes to post-draft, these are the kind of players that you'd like to see the New York Giants kind of bringing in and finding these 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round type of talents that people are overlooking. I always compare it to what the Los Angeles Rams have been able to do year in and year out, and the Giants have just been struggling to do that. So hopefully the Giants can get on track, you know, and hopefully this draft, although we only had 6 picks, you hope that this draft pans out, because I think that I won't say that Joe Schoen's job security is dependent on it, but I will say that his reputation is dependent on it, and eventually his reputation is going to turn into his job security somewhere down the line. So we'll see how that goes. As far as the injuries were in this game, you had Evan Neal dealing with the rolled-up ankle. He said he's fine. You had JMS with the ankle. He said he's fine. Timmy Horn out for the year with the Achilles, and then Darnay Holmes was dealing with a neck injury. There was a couple of other injuries in this game, not as important of players, and the Giants did make some roster cuts. Just a couple of days ago, Brian Daboll announced these when he did his presser. Wide receiver Ayer Asante was cut. Defensive tackle Kyler Ball was cut. Wide receiver John Giles was cut too, and he had a pretty decent game. He just flat out hurdled one of those defenders on one of his receptions, had another reception. He was looking pretty decent out there, but I think this wide receiver room is a little bit crowded, so he was a casualty of the cuts. Linebacker Trey Kaiser also was cut. Running back Lorenzo Lingard and running back Joshua Kelly. That one kind of hurts me a little bit. Safety Clayton Isbell was cut. And the one that I think is not necessarily a surprise, but probably the most alarming one was offensive lineman Marcus McKeith in the 5th round selection in 2022 who was let go by the Giants. And, that's one of Joe Shane's guys. They double dipped on offensive lineman from the University of North Carolina, which I thought was a little bit puzzling at the time. But Joshua Zidu, who was a top 100 pick, is really the only one left as far as that duo goes. I don't know if they'll bring Marcus McKeithen back for the practice squad or not. I don't really try to keep too much tabs on that, but as soon as that information comes out, I will definitely be here to report it for y'all. Let's say a couple of shout-outs, man. I see y'all in the building bright and early, man. And then we'll get to some of these giant overreactions. I wanted to keep this show today nice and tight. There's not a lot going on in the Giants community, and we just got 2 weeks that we got to buffer and just get by so that we can get to this season opener against the Minnesota Vikings. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Shout out to, let's wheel this back one time. Shout out to Michael Knight one time in the building, man. In the building one time. What's going on, fam? Hope all is well. I see JJ Stangle is in the building. Alfredo in the building. Berg says we here. Toxic Tom says y'all have the ability to actually fire a GM and move on like a proper franchise, so you have hope. Oh, that's the hope you was talking about, Tom. I knew that Toxic Tom had to have a little something going on with it. It couldn't be just all unicorns and rainbows one time. But shout out to Toxic Tom in the building. James Jones in the building said, what's up, Authentic? Mel Hayes said, new studio. Nah, not a new studio. I just turned the camera around. So I used to have the camera on my desk right here, but I wanted to give like a better presentation. So I just flipped things around. I got my whole streaming setup like on wheels, like on this little like TV cart right here, so I can just slide it around, move it around. I'm gonna probably do some streams from here when I'm doing stuff like looking at all 22 with y'all and stuff like that. But yeah, this is where I'm at day to day, man, doing my studio. We've been here almost a year now. So leaving from the crib I was on North Capitol, now I'm over here on the Silver Spring side and whatnot. So yeah, I'm loving it over here, man, and loving the setup here, man. Shout out to Mel Hayes one time in the building. Kareem Yee is in the building. What's going on, fam? Hope all is well. Who else we got here? Arturo Perez in the building. Tyrone Bowman is in the building. He says Turbo was banged up a little bit. Didn't have that burst of speed. Yeah, and we know Turbo, that's where he gets the nickname. He's definitely a guy with a lot of speed. I'd like to see him make the roster. It's interesting because you got a bunch of running backs that kind of have the similar skill set. I think Eric Gray, Joshua Kelly, even the kid Joshua Corbin that we had on the roster last year, they're all like serviceable, I guess, type of running backs, but more average type of running backs, and you can't keep them all, so it's going to be tough. I think Turbo brings a different skill set to the table with the amount of speed that he has, and possibly maybe you could see him eventually get on special teams maybe a little bit, maybe returning some kicks. We'll see how that goes. BG Mon is in the building. What's going on, fam? Toxic Tom says, Authentic, bit of a loaded question, but what do you think the 2024 New York Giants identity will be? Malik Neighbors. Offensively, it'll be Malik Neighbors. As a team, I think the backbone is going to be that defensive front. Like, if they can get to the quarterback, they'll give the Giants a lot of chances to win games. We're going to go over some stuff on the schedule a little bit later here. And I think that, like, if the Giants are going to surprise, it's going to be on the back of this defense. Like, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau taking another leap this year, and having a guy like Brian Burns opposite end of him, it should open things up. The big knock on Kayvon last year was how he got to the quarterback. A lot more pass reps and didn't get that many more pressures. I want to say his win rate was under 8%. So it's like, we got to clean those things up. And I think bringing in a guy like Brian Burns will absolutely help him. The big question mark now, though, is you saw Kayvon Thibodeau do it with Wink Martindale. We don't know if that's going to be the case in this Shane Bowen scheme. And preseason has not given us a lot to really, be able to assess what type of schemes the Giants are going to run come regular season and whatnot. So I think it makes it pretty difficult. So I'm really looking forward to that first game to really be able to assess what Shane Bowen brings to this defense and the difference, in comparing it to what Wink Martindale did, because Wink was just like, hey, man, throw the kitchen sink at you. I loved it. After Patrick Graham and the whole playing soft zone coverages and stuff like that, trying to keep everything in front of you, a bend, don't break type of style, to get a guy like Wink Martindale. And at times it definitely burnt us on third down and long, but I was all good with, just sending safeties at the quarterback and just really setting up different angles to be able to have a quarterback, second guessing where the pressure is going to come from. So we'll see how that works, man. Shout out to Toxic Tom one time. Tyrone says that hard to get rid of 4.2 speed. Turbo will be picked up. He was a sneaky signing, but now everyone knows. Is he 4.2 speed? Wow, that's really fast. I didn't really get the chance to check his 40-yard times. On the field, he looks like a 4.3, mid 4.3 type of guy to me. But yeah, I think the Giants are going to find a way to bring him back. I really do think they'll find a way to keep him on the roster. Greg Samaluka, I think I said that right. He said, DM King is here. Let's go authentic. Shout out to you. Reminder for that documentary you've got coming this season. Yeah, most definitely. Y'all keep your eyes peeled for that. I would say by week 4, we'll probably be releasing the first episode, just gathering up all the content, getting all the interviews ready. And anybody that's in the DMV area, especially if you are like somebody who sees a trajectory for Daniel Jones to be able to salvage this season and ultimately continue to be the Giants franchise quarterback, please reach out to me. I'm looking for people that kind of speak for the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to the quarterback position in New York. But shout out to Greg one time in the building. My guy Evan is in the building. What's going on, fam? Religiously up in here, man. Appreciate you pulling up as always. Tyrone also says that Neal looked horrible. Time to move him to the inside. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Find a way to try to salvage that. And, you know, when I was talking to the Beard about this at the game last night, you know, how the Washington Commanders moved on from a first-round selection in Jahan Dotson, you know, and they did get back fairly decent draft capital for him. But, you know, he's a guy that still has years left on the contract, and they decided to part ways. And you don't see that much. And when I think about Evan Neal, that's something to think about. Like, if you can get any value for a guy like that, I think you might want to consider it. Like, he hasn't been healthy, so it'll be really hard to try to find a way or try to find a team that would be willing to trade for a guy like Evan Neal, but he is still first-round draft capital, and I think that still holds a little bit of value. If he gets off to having a decent start, or maybe you can mask some of his reps while he's on the field and make it seem a little bit better than he really is, he's a guy that I would not be opposed to letting go before the trade deadline come at week 8. Catacomb man says, I have a bad feeling about this season, guys. I was being positive before, but there's something off. And that's how I feel about it, too. Like, I don't want to come into the year being, like, extremely negative. I was actually talking to somebody on Twitter about this, and he's like, bro, like, I love all your content, but it just seems like you report on so much negative stuff. And I'm like, look, there's not a lot to report on that's positive, you know, with what's going around the Giants organization right now. And, like, I've tried to find ways. Like, if you look at the video that I posted at the beginning of the year, how the New York Giants could surprise, kind of going against my traditional grain and speaking on what could go right, and maybe the Giants could go out there and maybe surprise this year. But it's been difficult, you know, and I just have to assess things the way that I see them. It's difficult for me to not be honest, to be honest. And, like, you know, going into this year, it's like, I don't mind being wrong. I'm not one of these people that, you know, speak on my team to be like, man, I told you so. But I do a lot of studying on the team. I look at a lot of tape. I try to keep up with what's going on around the organization and around the surroundings of it, and what's going on around the league, most importantly, to be able to make that comparison of who we are in comparison to the rest of the teams in the NFL. So it's tough, but yeah, I'm right there with you, Catacomb. Like, something just don't feel right. And to me, it feels like it's in the front office. I don't know if it's, you know, within the coaching staff quite yet. Like, I'm a high believer in Brian Daboll, and there's some speculation that maybe Brian Daboll kind of gave the organization the go-ahead, like, hey, I can win games with Daniel Jones, and I really just don't believe that. I think Brian Daboll really wanted to get his quarterback. You saw his ears raise up when they were talking about Jaden Daniels, when they were talking about Drake May, and rightfully so. All those guys look really good so far. James Jones says Taylor should have been drafted in day 2 or 3. GMs don't look at all the tape because Leonard Taylor was great for the U. Yeah, man, that dude, he's a guy, man. He was off my radar, and I looked at a lot of guys from the U. I was a big fan of Cameron Kitchens coming out. I thought the Giants could have went and got him at the safety position in one of the later rounds, but they went Tyler Nubin in round 2. Not too mad at that. But, yeah, Leonard Taylor, definitely a baller. You could see it all over that game. James Williams says, everyone loves Turbo, but if he gets hit with a strong wind of gust, he turns into a no-go. Yeah, he's you know, he's not the biggest, like, tackler breaker, and a guy that his center core type of balance is not the best, but I mean, you know, guys with speed like that, you can utilize that speed, and you can find ways to get them open and scheme them open, and you know, have them be a gadget if you got to be, and make plays down the field. James, I got a little bone to pick with y'all over there with Tim from Online Big Blue about the salary cap stuff, and you know, where the Giants are going to be. He's been deleting my comments that I post over there too, and I'm like, well, what's going on here? Are we trying to avoid the truth here? We got to definitely rap about that. But shout out to James Williams one time, man, for popping up and rocking out with us today. He also said hit that like button, and y'all know we not in it for likes, we in it for life. But if you want to hit that like button, do your thing. It's on you. Let me see who else we got in the building here. Any new ones? NYG Season 10 says Giants should start out 2-0. My boy Bass was just talking about this in the Twitter Spaces. I wouldn't say should with a capital, but I would say could. Absolutely. And that game against the Minnesota Vikings is going to be very telling. You're going to be able to get to see how this New York Giants offense is going to look going up against one of the, better defensive coordinators in the last, 5 to 10 years in the NFL. And granted, they don't have as much talent over there. They have brought in a couple of guys. So I think they could go 2-0. Washington looks pretty good. And I think Jaden Daniels is going to be a threat for that offense. Losing Jahan Dotson kind of opens up things at the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type of vibes. They got the kid Zacchaeus over there, who's looked pretty good. They got Christian McCaffrey's brother over there, he hasn't had too many reps, but he's looked pretty decent. So we'll see, man. I think their defense has improved. I like what they did with their linebacker core with Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu. They definitely made some upgrades over there. So I don't know if they'll be able to get it together. New coach in Dan Quinn, defensive-minded. So I expect the Commanders' defense to be much better. I'd say could start 2-0, but I'm going to pump the brakes, and I'm going to take the push on that one right there. Shout out to NYG Season 10 one time in the building. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets is in the building. He says shout out to the Old Town. Big shout out to you, man. Appreciate you pulling up, my guy. And let me see, we got G-Men 2011 in the building. Says, I was burned by this team last year, so it won't happen again this season. If we win, great. If we lose, then so be it. Not letting them get me down or angry this season. That's a good way to look at it. I kind of committed to that same vibe last year because the Giants would reel me in and get me angry when we would be in these close games, especially during like the Joe Judge tenure. It was very opposite of what you saw from Brian Daboll in 2022, where they won 7 games by 1 score. When Joe Judge was here, it was pretty much the opposite. I'm pretty sure there was one season there we lost 6 or 7 games by 1 score with Joe Judge, and you'd be like on your feet at the end of the game, and then Evan Ingram drops the ball down the left sideline going up against the Eagles. Daniel Jones fumbles the last drive, and we end up losing the game. So I've been just chilling, man. I just watched the games very calm. And what I'm doing this year is charting a lot of quarterbacks and putting together these compilations that they've been doing really well on the channel. And shout out to the new subscribers that have been pulling up, man. Like that last Trey Lance compilation has like 50,000 views on it. It's pretty ridiculous. But, I'll be doing that throughout the season. And it allows me to really assess the play live a lot better because I'm chopping those up as the game goes along. Really helps me keep my eye on the game a little bit better. But shout out to G-Men. I'm not getting burned this year either. If they win, it'll be fantastic. We'll see how that goes. Let me see who else we got in the building. Shout out to Rob one time in the building. He said, looked like Turbo had a bad contact balance to me, or looked like he had bad contact balance to me. He didn't look like he could break through arm tackles. Not my favorite type of back. Yeah, and those, I look at him as like a bit of a hybrid running back. He's a kind of catch and go type of guy. You could run a lot of like outside zone with him. I do think he could be a issue in pass protection. We haven't seen a lot of reps with him in pass pro in this preseason, but his build just kind of lends towards a guy that's not going to be that great at pass protection. But if I'm Brian Daboll, like I said, I use him like a gadget, kind of like what we were trying to do with Wan'Dale Robinson last year, kind of flexing him out, run a little motion, determine if teams are in man or zone, and be able to use like little jet sweeps, little quick hitters to him, and maybe he can get some yak and be able to find a way to make plays for the Giants. But nonetheless, I don't look at him as being a key contributor to this offense pretty much at all. Shout out to Lamar Green one time in the building. I think Lamar Green is a new face one time. He said, Wink would send everybody, but our secondary is trash. I think this year playing more zone will help, but that pass rush has to get there no matter what is my point. That's a great point right there. Like with the youth in the secondary, you lost Xavier McKinney, you lost Adoree Jackson. I don't even know who they're going to wheel out there and play cornerback 2 at the beginning of the year, whether it be Cordell Flott, whether it be Nick McLeod. You got Andrew Phillips in the mix, who I would imagine is going to be in the slot. Trey Herndon, who I thought had a pretty decent preseason game against, I think that was against the Lions, where he had the interception where he fumbled it on the return. But the corners are just very suspect, and that's a really good point. Like, you can't be sending the kitchen sink, when you don't really have the guys out there on the back end of the secondary that are going to be able to cover. And, I've noticed with this particular pass rush unit that we have with Brian Burns, it's preseason, granted, right? But with Brian Burns and with Kayvon Thibodeau, it's a lot of loopy outside type of pass rushing, and great quarterbacks are going to be able to step up in that pocket and buy themselves some more time. Both those guys, to me, have a lot of room to improve as far as stopping the run as well. And I do agree. I think that it with this particular unit, it's probably a better move to play a lot more cover 3, and that's what Shane Bowen is known for, kind of keeping guys back and whatnot. But if Wink Martindale was here, maybe the personnel would be a little bit different. But it's interesting that we're this far or this close to the beginning of the season, and the Giants have not really truly went out there and made a real move to address cornerback 2. And now guys like Stephon Gilmore are off the market. There are a couple other candidates out there, but none of them that play to that level of ability of a guy like Stephon Gilmore. And I think that's going to be something that might hurt the Giants in the long run. They got to find a way to address that. Let me see the homie Javi ATX. Boricua is in the building one time. What's going on, fam? He said, what's up, my guy? Keep up the good work. Love your content, man. Salute to you. I appreciate you rocking out with us today, man. Spending your Monday afternoon with us and you know, getting to talk a little bit of Giants football. Who else we got here? Toxic Tom says, I hate the people who only want to hear positive stuff. Sometimes the reality is grim and not great. Yeah, you know, like most people don't like to hear truth when it does not favor them in a positive matter. And I think that that's something as, you know, becoming an adult, I've gotten better at. And now it's like I'm willing to face the truth at all costs. I think it's much better. Tell me what it is right up front. Like I'm dealing with a couple of contracts right now, you know, just on the work side of things. And like, things are like really in the gray, and I don't like when things are in the gray. I'd rather it be, you know, in the red, boiling hot, or, you know, put me in the green, making a bunch of dollars. Like, just let me know what it is. I want to know exactly what I got to bring to the table and how to approach things. So I'm right there with you, Tom. Joe Winograd says that, hey, y'all, I see James Williams in the house. Shout out to Tim from Online Big Blue. Bucks released Sterling Shepard. Wow, they paid him a little bit of money to come over there too. I guess his camp didn't look the way that they you know, thought it would turn out. That might be it for Sterling Shepard if the Bucks released him. I don't see a team really going out there and digging up Sterling Shepard as a free agent. I don't see that happening. That's unfortunate news. I was really rooting for Sterling Shepard. But shout out to Joe one time in the building. Bergs is in the building, says talent and prospect evaluation is definitely fishy. Right there with you. Shout out to my brother L one time representing them Cowboys one time in the building, says salute authentic, just here to observe what my distant cousins and in-season ops are up to. Bless. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I've been lurking on a couple of streams from Vach and from Skywalker, you know, kind of just seeing what the temperature is with the Cowboys right now. I know y'all kind of looking a little bit iffy, but I still got faith y'all are going to be a pretty decent team contending for the division this year. Javi, let me get this one from Javi. Javi also said if the O-line holds, we're going to know if we are going to draft a quarterback in the upcoming draft. If the Giants don't draft a quarterback in 2025, I'm going to lose it. I've been on YouTube now going on 6 years, and they haven't drafted another quarterback. I would absolutely lose it. Shout out to the homie Bluegrass Picker one time for the $5 super chat. He says, thanks for being live, man. Thanks for being here, rocking out with me and supporting the channel, man. That means a lot, dude. You already know. You one of the day ones, been rocking out with us for a while. I got to see the beard yesterday. We went to the Commanders game, got to check out Drake May, lighting up their third stringers and whatnot. It was definitely a good vibe. Shout out to Chris Peace, man, for getting me those tickets, too, as a birthday gift. You know, he knows I'm doing this documentary and trying to gather as much footage as I can on the rookie quarterback class in comparison to what's going on in the quarterback room in New York. But shout out to Bluegrass Picker, man, pulling up, rocking out with us one time. Let me see. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says it feels like the team has to start out 2-0, maybe even 3-0. Browns wouldn't have Chubb. That's a good point. We're going to talk about the schedule here when I get to the overreactions, but the Browns aren't going to have Chubb. The Dallas Cowboys looking like they lost to Ron Bland for about 6 weeks or something like that, too. So if the Giants want to get out to a good start, they want to take advantage of all these injuries across the league as well. Let me just catch up. I see Rozelle the Great in the building. We got a bunch of gang in the building, man. Rashard is in the building. What's going on, Rashard? Hope all is well. Michael Fishman is in the building. He says our offense is garbage, bags, and over our heads. Okay, our offense is garbage bags and over our heads. I like that. Get rid of DeVito. He's not an NFL quarterback. I like him. This is a business. I like him too, and this is a business. I'm right there with you. That's going to be one of the giant overreactions we talk about today as well. Shout out to Forever Toxic Marquez Hardison in the building one time. What's going on, fam? Sending in the $4.99 super chat for the church's building fund. To my guy, Authentic, keep pushing forward with your common sense approach and rational outlook. Peace, my guy right there, man. Big shout out to the homie, man. MH in the building, rocking out with us, man. Lamar G-Man says, I'm a little new, but I follow your good stuff, man. But with Dex and KT and Burns out there, they have to hit. We need a veteran corner. Yeah, agree with everything you're saying there. Like, those guys got to get after the quarterback this year in a major way. I'm talking like top 5, top 10 type of unit. And I think that'll, you know, help things out on the back end of this defense for sure. But shout out to Lamar, man, pulling up, rocking out with us, man. Welcome to the gang. You already know. Okay. OG Knockout in the building says, damn, I'm late. What's good, Authentic? You're not really that late, man. We just kind of went over the Jets game a little bit, kind of just going through the chat, giving a couple of shout outs here, man. And, you know, just after that, we're going to get to these giant overreactions and, probably be about a good hour show. So quick burner today, man. We just got a little bit of clip, maybe a half a J from yesterday type of vibes, and then I'll get y'all up out of here. Cookie Monster in the building, man. We've been having some good chats on the comments, man. Shout out to Cookie Monster. He said, wow, I finally made a stream. Salute to you. This is going to be a good one. We got a couple of topics here. I think I got 4 giant overreactions, so stay tuned. It's going to be a good vibe today. Alfredo Andres says, not going to lie, season hasn't even started, but I'm already tired of this season with the quarterback situation in our cornerback room. I'm right there with you. Michael Knight says, are you still doing the NFC East documentary? Absolutely. It's going to be in season, probably doing about 4 episodes. Like I said earlier, probably about week 4, week 5, we'll get to that first episode, compiling all that content for y'all, trying to make this a different vibe over here and bring y'all a little bit of a cinematography approach to Giants content that, most people probably haven't seen outside of what we see on Hard Knocks. Shout out to Michael Knight one time in the building. Let me see if I missed anybody. I just want to catch up. We got Valentino in the building. I ain't seen Valentino in a minute. What's going on, fam? It says, are you in on taking a quarterback if DJ has a standout year? Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. So for me, Daniel Jones could have a NFC championship caliber type of year. I'm ready to move on after the year. I think that the evidence that is out there already speaks volumes on what kind of quarterback he is. And, I actually get this from Entertainer, is when you assess a player in the league, I remember Entertainer saying this, and I don't know if he abides by this still, and I could be wrong. It might not have been him. But whoever it was that said this to me one day, it really stuck with me. Look at a player's entire career and remove their best season, then evaluate them. Look at a player's entire career and remove their worst season and then evaluate them. And I think you'll come to a better determination of who that guy actually is. And I think I know who Daniel Jones is, and there's not a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL that would be given this type of opportunity 6 years in. Drummer Cam says, you guys want Trey Lance? Yeah, I mean, we saw the 5-interception performance. It was not good. It was not pretty. Put up 323 yards, though. I guess you can look at that as some kind of moral victory there. But nah, I'm good on the Trey Lance. Anybody that's been following us knows that I've been low, absolutely, do not want anything to do with Trey Lance, even when he was in San Francisco. I noticed in the first preseason there are major mechanic flaws with Trey Lance, and I think he's cleaning them up a little bit, but still trying to rely on his athletic ability a little bit, and that gets him in trouble a ton. Roy Williams in the building says, peace, peace, peace. What's going on, Roy? What's the stream without Danny Duds in the building, man? He says, Daniel Jones, year 6, we need a 30 for 30 on how the fuck we got here. That really would make for a depressing 30-30. And then Danny Duds says, I blame him for about 80% of it, for sure. And then last but not least, Evan Spitzberg says, this has been our best offensive line since Jones has been here. Time to produce. Has to. Absolutely has to. And Toxic Tom says, bruh, Lance and Jones were both top 10 picks. It's not easy to just find a quarterback. It's not. And you got to keep swinging. And, I love what the San Francisco 49ers did. They kind of took a page out of the Washington Redskins book from 2012, where when you trade a bunch of draft picks, 3 draft picks, for a guy like an RG3, well, it might make good sense to draft another guy in the later rounds, and they drafted Kirk Cousins. RG3 had a spark when he started, and then it kind of fell apart in the second and third year. His 2012 rookie season was amazing. And they had great insurance with Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins ended up being what I thought could have been a franchise quarterback for the Washington organization, but they ended up franchise tagging him twice and then moving on. And what I love about San Francisco with the Trey Lance situation, not only double dipping, granted it wasn't in the same draft, but double dipping at the quarterback position, was they moved on when they realized it was the wrong move. And I think that you have to commend people to be able to look at a situation. You buy a car from the dealership, 6 months in, it's breaking down, things are going wrong with it. And some people will say, nah, man, this is my baby. This is my car. I got to find a way to make it work. I'm going to take it back to the dealership. They're going to keep working on it. And one day I'm going to have that car of my dreams. And other people go back to the dealership and go, take this piece of shit back. I don't want this car anymore. And you got to respect the people that do that without waiting 5 to 6 years. OG Knockout says that I blame Gettleman, Shane, and Mara, then Daniel Jones and everyone else. Yeah, look, OG Knockout's got a really good point here. You have to blame a lot of the enabling from the fan base as well. You have to blame Dave Gettleman for reaching and drafting him with the 6th overall pick and not being patient enough to wait till the next draft class to be able to. The 2020 draft class was amazing. Instead, he was so pressing the issue to win while rebuilding, kind of like Joe Shane is doing right now. He reached on a quarterback at 6 and drafted Daniel Jones. That's not Daniel Jones' fault. John Mara now, after years of dysfunction at the quarterback position, he doubled down on it, and as soon as Daniel Jones won a playoff game, him and Joe Shane decided to pay Daniel Jones $40 million a year, $160 million contract. So they're all involved. And you see it in the fan base. Like, listen, I'll just keep it as funky as I can. If this was Jameis Winston, right, and the Giants drafted Jameis Winston, he would have been out of here in 2 or 3 years playing this type of football. He would have been out of here. Like, with the whole Daniel Jones thing, giving this guy 5 years was crazy in its own right, but giving him 6 years is just absolute insanity. And I think it has a lot to do with why, the rest of the NFL community looks at the Giants like, we're a bit of a laughing stock as far as, an organization. Shout out to Lou Mateo in the building. I see Michael Fisher in the building. Drummer Cam is in the building. Welvin is in the building one time. Big shout out to the gang, man. Let's get right into it, man. And let's talk about some of these Giant overreactions today. I told y'all we got 4 of them on the docket. This is going to be a really interesting show. Y'all know we can't go without talking about the quarterback position, on any given stream. That's just what we do. We always talking about the quarterback. So let's go into this first Giant overreaction and get this show really going on the road. For all the people that are going to be watching this on the replay and whatnot, this going to be the meat and potatoes of the show right here, man. Big shout out to the gang. Giants Nation is in the building. Let's get off into this first Giant overreaction. All right, I'm loving this one right here. And today, there's a bit of a theme on today's show. All of the Giant overreactions that you will see on the screen come from what I like to call my gang on Twitter. A lot of guys that I talk ball with on a daily basis. Shout out to everybody that's in the Momo chat. Shout out to the guys that I consider the GOATs of Twitter, talking football one time. This one comes from my homie Cross_420. He says the Giants have the worst quarterback room in the NFL, in the entire NFL. And he even put a truly, he's just adding adjectives on it to just make sure that you understand where he's coming from. Now, if you think that this statement on the screen is an overreaction, put an O in the chat for all my new folks out there to represent that you think that this particular fan, Mr. Cross_420, smoking that pack, and this is an overreaction. If you think that the statement on the screen is accurate, that means that you want to take the under on the overreaction and put a U in the chat to represent that you want to take the under. If you might need a little bit more time, which I can understand that with a guy like Drew Lock coming out in his preseason opener and completely struggling before having an injury, and maybe you need to see a little more Drew Lock and you want to take the push, put a P to represent that you want to take the push in the chat. I'm going to keep my eyes on the chat here and kind of give you some reasoning and what I think about the Giants quarterback room. We've talked about this in lengths over on Bleacher Report, and I'm going to get to talking about a poll that we saw over there. Ooh, I like it. This one split the room. I love it. I love what we're seeing here. Okay, so let's talk about this real quick. Now, as far as the Giants quarterback room goes, y'all know the video that we just clipped and posted on our channel is doing great numbers. The Giant overreaction about Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has not thrown 3 touchdowns in one game since 2019, since December of 2019, 38 straight regular season games without back-to-back performances with at least throwing 2 passing touchdowns. Tommy DeVito has done both of those, but he's not really a great quarterback himself either. And like I said on Bleacher Report, this is not an endorsement for Tommy DeVito. The Giants went the entire preseason without throwing 1 passing touchdown. I don't know if that happened to any other teams, but that's kind of pathetic that you don't have, of all these quarterbacks that went out there and took snaps, and Tommy DeVito threw the ball 27 times in this last game. We left the preseason in 2024 without throwing a single touchdown pass. Tommy DeVito was 14 of 27 for 103 yards. He was sacked 8 times in that game for 47 yards lost on the sacks. He rushed for 48 yards. So when you take away his sack yards in comparison to his rushing yards, he gained 1 yard. And that's not his fault. The offensive line looked pretty terrible in that game. Daniel Jones has been injured now for 4 out of 5 seasons. So, going into year 6, it's not going to surprise me if there are fans out there that are expecting a case where Daniel Jones could get hurt, and you might have to see one of these backup quarterbacks get into the game. And we saw that last year with Tommy DeVito and with Tyrod Taylor, and it really was not that great. I thought Tyrod Taylor probably did the best of all 3 quarterbacks that saw playing time in 2023. Daniel Jones has never thrown for 4,000 yards. A lot of people like to make the comparison because they saw that graphic versus Trevor Lawrence, Daniel Jones versus Trevor Lawrence. But Trevor Lawrence is one of, I believe, 4 or 5 quarterbacks to throw for 4,000 yards in back-to-back seasons. He also has over 21 touchdowns and over a 65% completion rate in both of those seasons. So really, Trevor Lawrence, the knock on Trevor Lawrence is the first year underneath Urban Meyer where he really struggled. And, that's very understandable. I mean, we saw Joe Judge, and that was bad head coaching, but Urban Meyer pretty much told Joe Judge, hold my beer. Now, Trevor Lawrence has 46 touchdowns in his last 2 seasons through the air. Daniel Jones has 38 touchdowns in his last 4 seasons. So I think we need to take that comparison and just put it to bed, okay? Now, around the league, if you've been watching preseason, and if you haven't been watching preseason, you can get a good glimpse. I'll give you the cliff notes pretty much on this channel. I've chopped up a bunch of quarterbacks compilations of their performances from all the first-round quarterbacks, from Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, some of the, later-round quarterbacks, Spencer Rattler, Joe Milton. I even just did one on Malik Willis. We've been doing them on Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young. So if you just want to get, condensed versions of these games, you can check them out on the channel. I'm going to be doing that all year long, not only for the New York Giants quarterbacks, for all the quarterbacks in the NFC East and others across the NFL, especially the younger guys in year 1, year 2. Now, around the league, you're seeing these guys all performing, backups performing. You're seeing bridge quarterbacks go out there and perform. You even saw in this game against the Jets, their quarterback, I had never heard of this kid, Adrian Martinez. To me, he was the best quarterback on the field that night. He was 12 of 20 for 99 yards. He had 3 rushes for 23 yards, a big 20-yard run as well. I got to see Drake May last night in person, 13 of 20 for 126 yards, 1 touchdown. The touchdown was a beautiful little quick throw. He looks extremely decisive and comfortable in the pocket. The one thing that stood out to me about Drake May is he looks smaller on the field when I saw him in person. Joe Milton as well. They don't look like these big statured quarterbacks that you're seeing on TV, but nonetheless, these guys are all playing pretty decent. Joe Milton, not so much. Had a pretty tough day at the office in this preseason game with the Commanders and last week in their preseason matchup as well. But you're seeing it across the league. Bo Nix, all these guys are looking pretty good. I mean, Bo Nix already got named as the starter for the Denver Broncos. And we put up a poll on Bleacher Report, and my God, did this thing get a ton of traction over there. There was 50,000 votes on this about who has the worst quarterback room in the NFL. Now, they only gave you 3 options, and I thought one of the options was a little bit just a little bit egregious, a team that probably shouldn't be in there with a second-year quarterback, which was the Carolina Panthers. And they took a clip where I was talking about the quarterback room with the New York Giants, and so many comments. I mean, 800 comments in this thread of people just saying, yes, 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 the New York Giants had a worst quarterback room in the league. Now, when it comes to the voting and the way that the polls went, 50% of the people, of 50,000 people that voted, so 25,000 people said the New York Giants have the worst quarterback room in the league. 35% said the Raiders. And I thought that 35% probably comes from a lot of the people in the Giants fan base. A lot of people don't watch ball across the league, right? They're only focused on what they see in their market. They watch games locally. They don't have the NFL package on NFL Plus or the season ticket, none of that stuff. They're not watching Red Zone. They're not getting none of that. So all they really get to see is local games. And I think that forms a very uninformed opinion when you do that, right? So when people are saying the Raiders, they're talking about Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew's a much better quarterback than Daniel Jones is right now. And I saw people in the comments saying, yeah, Daniel Jones is a miles better than Gardner Minshew. I mean, just go take a look at the numbers. I don't have them in front of me right now, but I remember when he left Jacksonville, it was 41 touchdowns to 16 interceptions. He is the definition of a game manager. He's a guy that when your rookie franchise quarterback ends up getting hurt in Anthony Richardson, he can come in there and be serviceable and win games, right? And he did that last year, and he almost took the Colts to a playoff berth as well. I think they were just 1 game out of the playoffs. I think they were a 9-win team. You got the other kid over there with the Raiders. The Beard loves this kid too. O'Connell. I can't remember. Aiden O'Connell. And he looked pretty decent in time last year too. I mean, he pretty much took the job. It was Jimmy Garoppolo that was over there struggling, dealing with injuries. And when Pierce ended up getting hired as the interim head coach, who's now the real head coach, he decided they would go with Aiden O'Connell. And you could see that Devontae Adams was in support of that decision. I think that both their quarterbacks might be better than all the quarterbacks on the Giants roster. I mean, you might think that's an overreaction to say that Aiden O'Connell is better than Daniel Jones, and I wouldn't argue it. I mean, that could be the case. But at the same time, I don't look at the Raiders as one of the worst quarterback rooms in the NFL. I think the team that was left off by Bleacher Report was the Minnesota Vikings. Like, you could argue that Sam Darnold has pretty much had a very parallel career to what Daniel Jones has had. The Jets did give up on him maybe a little bit earlier, but they gave him a fair shake and a fair shot at it, and he could not prove that he was the guy. He then went to the Carolina Panthers, and he struggled over there with the Carolina Panthers as well, and now he's kind of getting another shot with the Minnesota Vikings. But with J.J. McCarthy injured for the rest of the season, I think you could argue that the Vikings possibly have one of the worst quarterback rooms in the league too. It all depends on what Daniel Jones we get, to be honest, and it gives me a little bit of pause on this post right here to maybe think maybe I should take the push on it, because if you get the average serviceable Daniel Jones, the guy that we got from 2022, then I don't think the Giants have one of the worst quarterback rooms in the league. If you get the Drew Lock that we've seen throughout his career as a backup, I would say the same exact thing. But if you get that Drew Lock that we saw in the preseason game trying to throw, what was that, a front side dig with the linebacker just waiting on it, or maybe it was a strong safety playing cloud coverage, like, he didn't even see that guy, and he threw the ball right to him. So for me, I'm going to say that this is not an overreaction for sure, but I'm going to take the push on this and maybe see about 5 or 6 games from Daniel Jones to see which version of Daniel Jones we're going to get entering the 2024 season. Let's kind of wheel this one back and just see how everybody is looking at this one here, and who thinks it's an overreaction and who doesn't think. So Valentino thinks it's an overreaction. Oscar also thinks it's an overreaction. Gregory's in the building. What's going on, fam? Hope all is well with you. Oscar said the Raiders exist, and I kind of just broke that down. I don't see any world where the Raiders have a worse quarterback room than the New York Giants. Oscar on Raider also says the Broncos. Zach Wilson is struggling at the quarterback position. Has looked pretty decent in preseason, but Bo Nix looks really good, and the verdict is not out yet on Bo Nix, but I could see a case being made for that. OG Knockout said Tyrod Taylor played better than Daniel Jones, and they treated him like crap. That's why he's not back now, and that's 100% facts. The way that they dealt with Tyrod Taylor's injury is probably why he's not on the roster today. Welvin says it's an overreaction. The only quarterbacks that's proven to all be bad. Berg says he's taking the under on this one. Who in our quarterback room makes a defense double guess themselves? Yeah, none of them. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says it's an overreaction. We don't know that yet, and the Steelers are also an NFL team. I mean, Russell Wilson is a better quarterback than Daniel Jones, and no Mets, I'm going to keep an eye on what you say in the thread here, right? Would you do an even swap right now, Daniel Jones for Justin Fields? I want to know what you think about that. Brian T says it's an overreaction. Let me see what else we got here. The Glock is in the building. What's going on, Glock? I ain't seen Glock in a minute. Let me see if I know where the Glock at. Missed. There you go. Glock in the building. What's going on, fam? Hope all is well, man. He says it's an overreaction. Welvin is taking the under, the only set of quarterbacks that all proven to be bad. We doubled down on that one time. Keith Wilson Jr. says he's taking the under. OG taking the under. He's telling the truth. Rob says it's an overreaction. The Raiders exist. I really think people need to just go look at Gardner's numbers. Just go look at the advanced data on Gardner Minshew. I think he's a better quarterback than Daniel Jones, especially for the money. Gardner Minshew was a guy that I wanted to bring in the year that we signed a contract with Daniel Jones as a bridge quarterback, and I wanted to try to trade up and draft a guy like Anthony Richardson. Drummer Cam says, Toxic Tom and myself are Cowboys Nation. Hey, big shout out to y'all for pulling up.
Spike don't care.
I know you like that right there. Shout out to Drummer Cam. One time in the building says, I do like your takes, though, Authentic. You are definitely one of the best streamers in Giants territory. Man, thank you for that. Salute, dog. I just try to put in the work and try to bring value to the community and just try to, keep the takes level-headed and keep them honest. Don't be, too homerish and too positive, and at times trying to convince myself to not be too negative. You know, it's like Eminem Guilty Conscious. I got Dr. Dre on one side and I got, the devilish Eminem on the other side, and I'm trying to find balance, man. But appreciate you, man, and appreciate the kind words, my dude. Michael Knight says it's an overreaction. Toxic Tom's talking about the Raiders. JJ and Tyrone both think they're taking the under on this one. Gregory says it's an overreaction. Trey Lance is a lot worse, but we're talking quarterback room here. Now, when you look at Dak Prescott, I feel you. Trey Lance is a lot worse, but what happened to Cooper Rush? Did the Cowboys part ways with Cooper Rush? Because if he was out there as a backup, I would totally bring that guy in. James Jones says he's taking the under. Bluegrass picker with the first push, which is probably the most reasonable way to look at it. Zani says as much as Drew Lock sucks and isn't good, he's not a bad backup. Tommy DeVito isn't a bad third stringer either. I got to disagree with you on that one. Not fully, because I do think Drew Lock can be a decent backup. He showed that with the Seattle Seahawks last year, but what we're seeing so far has been tough. Muhammad Ali, the champ, is here one time in the building, says, you can't think of a team with the worst quarterback room. He's taking the under. The Bald Walker is taking the under. Shout out Bald Walker. I think he'd be on Twitter too. I think I'll be seeing that Avi on Twitter a lot. Shout out to you. Let me see. Oh, this is a good one here. Evan Spitzberg brings up the Saints. I'd still disagree. I like Spencer Rattler, 5th round selection. You could say that Derek Carr and Daniel Jones could be a wash. I still think you got a better opportunity to win games with Derek Carr. Valentino says, overreaction, DJ isn't dirt on the floor. He's way more serviceable than some of these starters. Valentino, I challenge you to name them. Name the starters you think that Daniel Jones is better than. I'll try to keep an eye out for it. Stevie Johnson. That reminds me, was that Stevie Johnson for the Bills? I think it was Stevie Johnson, man. One of the most underrated wide receivers, bro. That dude was a dog. Taking the under one time. Let me see. We got Pinjo Pickers in the building. What's going on, fam? Says over. Tommy is the man. Ooh, I can't agree with you on that one, but welcome to the party, man. I appreciate you pulling up, my dog. Door Gunner says no starting quarterback on their roster. Yeah, that's how I feel too. BG Man says it's an overreaction. We got the under from Catacomb. Cookie Monster says it's the worst quarterback room. Minshew is better than all 3 of our quarterbacks. Martin, how I say this one? UK Pie, maybe, or Uck Pie. We're going to call you MU for the day one time. Daniel Jones going to surprise the league this year. He's actually capable of playing well, just got to break through the mental barriers of expectations. So I think that Daniel Jones could have a good year, which is why I'm taking the push on this one, right? But I think for the people that really take a deep dive into what these quarterbacks are doing and really looking at the mechanics and looking at the reads and looking at some of the perspectives and opinions from some of these professionals that break down tape, there's a lot more to Daniel Jones than the barriers, the mental barriers of expectations. There's some physical deficiencies as well. I do think the mental ones are the ones that are, he wears those on his sleeve, obviously. But I think that with Daniel Jones, a lot of the decision-making has been an issue. And then coming back off this knee injury, is he going to be that same guy that we saw from 2022 that's going to be able to take off and run a lot? We saw one pretty big run in the preseason game against the Houston Texans where he picked up like 12 yards, and he looked to be pretty healthy to me. So we'll see. I wouldn't rule it out, but I also wouldn't bank on it, right now. I'm not banking on Daniel Jones going out there. And also people have different thresholds of what a surprise year would be. For me, a good year for Daniel Jones would be just over 20 touchdowns through the air and putting up over 3,500 yards. So around the league, that's not really that good. But I think for him, that will be a type of year that could put the Giants in position to win a lot of games. Let me see. There's a lot of y'all, man. Brother L's taking a push. He said for preseason, we'll find out if the Giants quarterback room is that bad. We'll see if some other teams fight for the worst title. Yeah, you never know. It's a league of parity, and things always change throughout the year. You don't know who's going to get hurt, and you don't know who's going to have a standout type of season or who's going to regress, who's going to advance and help their team to win games. We really don't know, and all we can do is speculate at this time. But I do enjoy this. I enjoy the barbershop talk before the season starts, and trying to make these predictions. Lou Mateo is taking the push one time. Shout out to the Beard one time in the building. He said, I'm late, but here's my under for this one on the screen. Shout out to the Beard one time in the building, man, the best co-host in the country. Talked to him just yesterday about when we getting back, man. Can't wait for those previews, man. Week 1 is going to be lit up here. And let me see. I think that's about all of them right now as far as the votes. So pretty split on this one. Like, pretty split, And I think with reason. Sebastian's in the building. He's taking the under as well. And then I saw this one from Oscar, DJ over Sam Darnold. Yeah, I wouldn't argue, but it's not by much. It's not by much. Jester's in the building one time, says, yo, what's going on? OG Knockout said, delusional Giants fans are going to let Daniel Jones fool them again. Watch this season. Don't say I didn't tell you so. Yeah, OG's been saying it for 4 or 5 years on this channel, man. Like, Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback. And for me, I know a lot of people look at these comments as maybe a little over the top when I say that I think he's an average quarterback. And there's a bit of me that wants to give him the benefit of the doubt in that. And, factoring in the surroundings around Daniel Jones, which have not been good, like I get it. He looks like a Davis Mills type of quarterback, and Davis Mills didn't have much going on around him when he was the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans either. But nobody's saying like, hey man, Davis Mills never had a wide receiver one. His offensive line was banged up and he didn't really have playmakers on the outside. Nobody ever says that. So I just think for some odd reason up top in New York, a lot of people want to give Daniel Jones, a lot of excuses. So OG been saying this for a long time. Can't disagree with that one bit. Nova Nebula's in the building. What's going on, fam? Nova Nebula said, not for nothing. I love that saying, right? Like, my brother always got sayings like that where he just be like, one thing for certain, two things for sure. Like, I love sayings like that. Not for nothing. I think the entire fan base is overreacting to everything in the preseason both ways. For me, it's like a lot of my takes as of late have not just been about the preseason, but then it's like when you've been dealing with what the Giants have been dealing with for the past 5 years, and then you finally get to see a little bit of football played from the quarterback who has not played football in like 10 months, and it looks like that, I understand why people are overreacting a little bit. But, yeah, it's preseason, and, I don't look at the scoreboard too much in preseason. I don't really look at the box scores too crazy during preseason. I try to just assess the play. And Daniel Jones against the starters did not look good. But if you want to look at it from a positive perspective, he did bounce back in the second quarter against the second and third team for the Houston Texans. And he put up some decent numbers, had that big throw down the sideline to Darius Slayton, and made a couple of other good throws. The backside dig to Malik Neighbors, the back shoulder fade to Jalen Hyatt, which was incomplete, but still nonetheless a good throw. Let me see. Sebastian says, I'm not buying any of the DJ hype if there is any this year. Yeah, I'm keeping it cool. I mean, even if he gets off to a good start, I'm still going to just be keeping it cool. And I'll wait till around after the bye to, start digging some graves or, start showing y'all some dead bodies. We'll see how that goes. John says, shout out to John, too. John, day one, man, been rocking with us for a long time. Big supporter of this channel as well. Says, hypothetical, which other quarterback guru coach could fix DJ's negative? The likes of McVay, Shanahan, or Peyton? I mean, you named them all. Like, McVay is really good with quarterbacks. I don't know if any of those guys could fix Daniel Jones. I think it's more of a Daniel Jones problem than it is a coaching problem. There are quarterbacks out there, I feel like, that are dealing with worse situations as far as the play caller goes, not necessarily with the playmakers, that I feel like if you brought them around Brian Dable, their skill set would shine a lot more. Shout out to 59 Ways to Groove. 39th birthday, and I'm in the stream with the gang. What's up, man? Happy birthday, my dog. 39, man. This is your last year before you hit that big 40. Don't let them tell you, man, you old and you wash. What they be calling them? Oh, don't let them call you old head either, man. Make sure they calling you an OG, man. But blessings to you on your birthday, man, on your 39th lap around the sun, man. Big salute to you. I appreciate you being here on your birthday, too, man. That means a lot, bro. Let me see what else we got here before we move to the next giant overreaction. Oh, did CD just get paid, y'all? 4 years, $136 million. Big shout out to Pretty Ricky one time. Pretty Ricky been talking about these deals going down, man. That dude is always right, man. Big shout out to Pretty Ricky. He was the first one that talked about all that CD Lamb stuff. 4 years, $136 million is nice. I'm curious to see how much the guarantees were as well, man. That's awesome. Big shout out to CD Lamb, man. I think one of the top 5 wide receivers in the NFL right now. Big shout out to him for getting his bag one time. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says DJ could lead us to 2 playoff wins. A new quarterback should be drafted. Enough with the inconsistency and unimaginable amount of hope. Yeah, like even if he plays well and you decide to bring him back, you should absolutely draft another quarterback. Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. I see Deedon Shelton is in the building. What's going on, fam? Hope all is well. What else? $100 million guaranteed for CD Lamb. Big shout out to CD Lamb. That is awesome. $100 million.
Spike don't care.
Big shout out to CD Lamb. God damn Cowboys, man. Just be pulling money out of there. Yeah, it's crazy. It's definitely crazy. Zani says, authentic, you got any surprise cuts for the 53-man roster? Yeah, I think one's going to come in the wide receiver department. We're going to talk about that in 2 giant overreactions here. And again, I told y'all, all of these giant overreactions that we're presenting and putting on the table here today come from a lot of my homies on Twitter. Shout out to them, man. They've made me a better football knower, more knowledgeable. We talk ball every day, whether it be in spaces, in groups, and, when breaking news breaks and all that stuff, these guys are right there giving me all the information, man. So shout out to everybody who I'm going to be highlighting today as a part of this giant overreaction show. Let me see. John said, dang, who's going to throw to him next year? Not Dak. We'll see, man. Like, if they don't have another plan at the quarterback position, they're going to have to pay Dak whatever he's demanding, $60 million or whatever it may be. It's going to be tough for them, though, running out of cash. salary cap is a thing for sure. So we'll see how that goes. But let's get off into this next giant overreaction. This one's going to be a bit of a quick one here. I wanted to piggyback on the quarterback situation before we get to moving. All right, man. Shout out to the homie one time, Jack Campbell, off Twitter. I've highlighted a couple of his tweets here. He says, go get Malik Willis. He added the Giants, and he added Brian Dable. I want to talk about Malik Willis a little bit. I did put up the compilation of all of Malik Willis's throws and all of his runs versus the Saints in their preseason finale. He looked really good in that game. Shout out to my homie Don one time. Don was saying, how dope would it be if we were to get Malik to Malik? I think that would be really dope. Now, Malik Willis is not a guy who is, looked at as a starter in this league per se right now. He's fighting for a roster spot right now with the Tennessee Titans, who already have a couple of quarterbacks in the room, with Will Levis being their starter and with Mason Rudolph being the number 2, who got the start in that game against the Saints ahead of Malik Willis. Malik Willis was drafted in the 3rd round of the 2022 draft. Him and Kenny Pickett, I believe, were the only quarterbacks that were drafted in that entire draft, I think. If not the entire draft, it was just the first 3 rounds. He was on the board when the New York Giants drafted at 67 and 81, and we decided to go with Joshua Ezedu and Cordell Flott. Malik Willis is a transfer from Auburn. He played 2 years at Auburn, didn't really get no snaps, transferred to Liberty. That's where he started to shine against lesser talent, and that was always the knock on him coming out in the draft. A lot of people were looking at it like, hey, if you're going to draft this guy in the 1st round, it will be an absolute reach, and I was in agreement with that. But when he was there on the board in the 3rd round, I was like, why not? Why not take a flyer on a guy like this? And that was in 2022, before the New York Giants went to the playoffs. Now, yesterday in the game versus the Saints, he led them to victory. He had 2 touchdowns in that game on back-to-back drives, destroyed the 2-minute drill. I mean, he looked fantastic, and I thought that their coach was not putting Malik Willis in really grand situations as far as down and distance. They were very predictable in that game. I charted every throw, recorded every throw. 1st and 2nd down, they ran the ball, and they were effective running the ball. They look like they're going to be a team that's, maybe a little bit of a sleeper this year. And they ran the ball well, but they would put him in situations on 3rd down, 3rd and long, where he was forced to throw the ball. And I thought that was doing him a disservice. He ended up finishing the day just 3 of 4 for 51 yards. A beautiful fade route down the right sideline. It looked a little bit like the one that Jaden Daniels threw in his preseason debut. And he had 3 rushes for 29 yards. The game-winning touchdown came on 4th and goal in the red zone. He's at the line of scrimmage. His slot wide receiver's kind of like trying to get his attention to show that there's something going on in the coverage. And Malik really kind of just ignored that and then threw a dart on a little slant route to the inside. Perfect touchdown to win the game for the Tennessee Titans, man. It was a beautiful drive by him. Now, I think for me, if you were to bring in a guy like Malik Willis, it would obviously not be to be the starter. You already paid Drew Lock backup quarterback money, paying him $5 million a year. But I think that he would be a nice little project quarterback. I mean, he is extremely dynamic. He's got a rocket arm. He can run the shit out of the ball. You could run all that read option stuff, the RPOs, the PROs, all of that stuff that you want to run. You could absolutely implement that with a guy like Malik Willis. And, more importantly, I'm rooting for Malik because he's a really good dude. I don't know if you guys remember during the lead up to the draft when he was like going to the combine, there was like some like homeless dude on the side or something like that. And like this dude just gifted like everything that he had in his bag to that dude. Definitely a man of God. He talks about it a lot on Twitter. And I'm just rooting for him. Like when he was going down the field on that drive, man, I was just like crossing my fingers like, bro, I hope this goes well for you because he's had a tough start to his career. He's only had 2 starts. He has not thrown a passing touchdown yet in those 2 starts. They were very reserved with him, didn't throw the ball a ton. He's got 3 interceptions. One of those came in relief time. I want to say last season. He's got 1 touchdown on the ground and the 2 interceptions the year before. So he's a guy that like has not put pen to paper yet in a major way, but I think he would be a great quarterback as far as molding for a guy like Brian Dable. To me, he possesses a lot of the similar characteristics of a guy like Anthony Richardson. You could run the ball with him in a major way. You could do a lot of that stuff that Shane Steichen was doing with Jalen Hurts. He's a strong kid, big physical body, extremely fast. I mean, there were comparisons for Malik Willis comparing him to Michael Vick as far as the play style, and his delivery looks a lot like Michael Vick. At times can be a little bit inaccurate and whatnot, but I think it will be a fantastic move. And to me, I don't think that there's much of a future with a guy like Tommy DeVito. He does not see the field well, and he does not recognize pressure well, and I think that's why you see these kind of performances where, yeah, it's not all on him. I do think 50% of his pressures were turned into sacks, and with the 8 sacks, you could look at him as about maybe half of them were on Tommy DeVito, but I would have much more faith in the backup quarterback position bringing in a guy like Malik Neighbors. So when it comes to this statement on the screen as it being an overreaction or if I'm going to take the under or take the push, I agree with this statement wholeheartedly. Like, if the Titans are going to part ways with Malik Willis, which I think that there's a good chance they don't, I mean, I think we should just pounce on that, like, and just go get a quarterback like that and then draft another quarterback next year. And then now your quarterback room could be looking a lot like what the New England Patriots are looking at right now with Drake May and Joe Milton at the quarterback position. So let's see what y'all are talking in the chat one time. Man, that 6-hour stream I did the other day, that it's like my voice is still kind of gone from that. And I still feel like the COVID is kind of like lingering or something, like that 2% kind of symptoms still lingering around, but we'll see how that goes. Let's see how people are talking about this one in the chat here one time. So let me see how far I got to scroll back. Yeah, shout out to Over the Years Sports with the breaking news. CD Lamb, 4 years, $136 million. Loving that right there for him. Let's see, where do you start here? Okay, so Bergs says he's taking the under on this one time. It honestly can't hurt at this point. I'm right there with you. Valentino's taking the under. I take him over DeVito just off of potential. Absolutely. And when you look at what DeVito does well, it's like he can kind of like sometimes buy time. And when defenders have their backs to him running down the field, covering his wide receivers, he finds ways to run the ball. Like DeVito had like 48 rushing yards in this game, and a lot of it came on broken down pass plays, not really quarterback design runs. So I'm with you on that. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says, overreaction. Get him for what amount? What you giving up? Let's just draft 2 quarterbacks in the next 2 drafts. Well, the next draft doesn't look like it has a lot of quarterbacks. And you wouldn't have to, if they cut him, you wouldn't have to give up anything for Malik Willis. This guy's going to sign some contract that's like nothing. Like, it's not going to cost you any money. Giants are working with $13 million right now in cap space. Like, that move wouldn't cost you a thing. It would cost you somewhere around $1 million or something, I'd imagine. Nothing more, probably. Let me see what else we got. Rob is taking the overreaction on this one, unless it's for the practice squad. That's where I see it being, is the third quarter. You can carry a third quarterback on the roster this year and last year, for a matter of fact. That doesn't affect the 53-man. So he'd be that guy. I'd have him as the third quarterback. Think about him from a scouting perspective, too. When you're prepping to go up against teams like the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts, and you need a real mobile running quarterback to show what Jalen Hurts does in practice. Malik Willis would be perfect for that. Think about when you got to go up against Lamar Jackson in the Ravens. Malik Willis would be the perfect scout team quarterback to fake like he is Lamar Jackson. We also got to play Anthony Richardson this year. Malik Willis could absolutely do that as well. And any other type of mobile quarterbacks that we're going up against this year. In practice, I think he's a guy that's going to make people miss and be able to play that role well. Much, much better than a guy like Tommy DeVito. Lou Mateo says he's taking the under on this one. Generational talent. I don't know about generational talent, but I think that the ceiling for a guy like Malik Willis could be really high. When you see this dude like throw with velocity on his intermediate throws, he's got an absolute cannon. And that's one of the things that a lot of people are fearing with Anthony Richardson when you're talking about defenses going up against him and, how to try to stop and game plan against a quarterback like that. Like, these kind of quarterbacks can fit the ball into tight windows. Now, same time, that does get them in trouble sometimes and can lead to some tip passes and possibly some turnovers for the other team. But I don't see any negatives with bringing in a guy like Malik Willis. Gregory says it's an overreaction. Let me see. Pinho Picker says major you on this one. Been a huge fan of Willis since Liberty. Plus, he will be cheap. Yeah, that's the thing. He ain't going to cost you nothing. And he, to me, makes the quarterback room better with all the examples that I expressed there, with especially the scout team thing. Like, that's a real thing. John says he's taking the push. Would rather have Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Another one that's going to be out there, I feel like. I feel like the Browns are probably going to part ways with him, which is interesting. They spent a little bit of draft capital on him, nothing too high, but he has shown some flashes in his brief time playing. I want to say that he had a couple of starts where he played when Deshaun Watson was dealing with some injuries before they went out there and brought in Joe Flacco. And you're seeing it in preseason. I mean, he's a mobile guy, has a pretty decent arm. I like Malik Willis a little bit more because I feel like the ceiling is higher. Bigger arm, more of a rocket arm, bigger body, better runner. DTR, I think, does a little bit of the fundamentals a little bit better than a guy like Malik Willis. Kevin the PRF says it's an overreaction. Kareem E says Willis can be a project that could possibly come in and run the RPO pretty well. He also has decent pocket awareness. Yeah, I love his pocket awareness. When he runs, he looks like Mike Vick. I think that, and I remember Tim from Online Big Blue was making a lot of comparisons to Mike Vick, and I told him, I said, man, pump the brakes. Like, Mike Vick was a different type of talent. Like, the way that Mike Vick, his speed translated at that time, like during that era, he was miles faster than these guys trying to chase him. Now the defensive ends, the edge rushers, even the guys, in the center of defensive lines, linebackers, they're all faster now. So you have to be an extraordinary talent to get compared to a guy like Michael Vick. I do think that Willis has that style, though. It's like when I looked at Michael Penix Jr., his style reminded me a lot of Geno Smith as far as the way he approached throwing from the pocket. Now, that's not to say that they're the same quarterback. And same thing goes with Malik Willis and Mike Vick. They look very similar on the field. The way that they play the game, the way that they hold the ball, the way that they see things down the field, and the decisiveness to take off and run at, the drop of a dime. So I'm right there with you on that, Kareem. Hyphen Wade is taking the push on this one, would rather have Hooker. Now, I don't know if I would rather have Hooker. I would not be opposed to that. But to get Hooker, you're going to have to trade. That's the thing. They're not going to cut him. Where Malik Willis, in this particular scenario, I think that the Titans are likely going to cut him, or they're going to keep him as their practice squad quarterback as well. He's had an impressive preseason, so I think that it wouldn't surprise me either if the Titans don't cut him. Let me see. Nova Nebula said, where did he at Dable? I mean, I think that's where he's at in Dable when he's adding Coach Dable. Deedon is taking the push on this one. Kareem Yee taking the under. Muhammad Ali, the champ, is here one time, is taking the under. Definitely a better option than DeVito. Gregory said that CD and Jerry were playing chicken and Jerry blinked. OG Knockout says it's an overreaction. Sebastian said under, anything is better than, I'm sure, suggesting what we have. Oh, here it is right here, what we got right now. Welvin says it's an overreaction, just not necessary for this season. Draft next year. Yeah, I don't think that bringing in a guy like Malik Willis should stop you from drafting a quarterback next year. I just think that, what I'm seeing around the Giants beat reporters and what they are reporting right now is that Tommy DeVito brings a certain asset to this team, and that he's probably going to make the 53. Like, if you see a guy like Malik Willis out there, I would swap out Tommy DeVito in a heartbeat for a guy like Malik Willis. And OG Knockout said, my bad. He was actually taking the under on this one. I'm with you on that. Diet Ghost says, I'd love to see Dable with Malik. He never got a fair shake in Tennessee. Tannehill never wanted to help him. Yo, I was listening to some of the Tennessee Titans, comments in their community, looking at some things on Bleacher Report. And they were pretty much saying that, drafting Malik Willis, screwed up Ryan Tannehill mentally or something like that. A lot of people were, leaning towards this guy needed a therapist simply because they drafted Malik Willis. And right now, Ryan Tannehill is a free agent. And I thought Ryan Tannehill was a fringe top 15 type of quarterback, when he was playing. It's interesting that he's no team has picked him up. And meanwhile, you got guys like Carson Wentz still in the league. And, it's kind of puzzling. The Ball Walker says he's taking the under. I liked Willis coming out and wanted him. With Dable coaching him up, I think we'd have a good time watching him. Yeah, he's exciting too, man. I think, probably wouldn't get on the field this year. But, I said DeVito wouldn't get on the field last year, and he did get on the field. But, Malik Willis is a guy that, it's an exciting watch. The kid is dynamic, and he makes big plays with his legs, and he has a big cannon arm, can throw the ball 70 yards. So I think he brings some excitement to the room. Let me see. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says not money. But if he's not cut, the Giants would have to give up a draft pick at least. Yeah, I don't think anybody would say, hey, let's go trade a draft pick for Malik Willis. I don't even think Malik Willis would command a draft pick. He was a third-round draft pick that really has kind of not shown to be the type of player that would live up to where he was drafted at in the third round. So I don't think there's any scenario where anyone's given up any draft picks for Malik Willis. Lou Mateo says, meaning Willis is what the NFL is right now. I think worded it wrong. My bad. Okay, yeah, I feel you on that. The quarterback position is trending more towards guys that play it that way. And I just want that kind of skill set in the room. And like I said, I think there are a lot of advantages to him being the practice squad quarterback. Rob says the main problem is you never see him scanning the field. At least I haven't in college or so far in the pros. If you think Jones stares down the first read, Willis will drive you crazy. I don't see that on his tape. There are times I feel like Willis does scan the field a little bit. I don't think he reads the field particularly fast. I think he is similar to a Daniel Jones, though, where he kind of looks, and then if it's not there, he's going to try to take off and run. Bluegrass Picker said, great point on the speed of the whole game catching up. Yeah, I think that that's hurt quarterbacks too, like Deshaun Watson. Like, in 2020, Deshaun Watson was a quarterback that was considered a dual threat guy that did a lot with his legs and had a cannon arm and could do it all. And now the game is just a little bit faster for him. The reads aren't as quick. His ability to be able to escape out of the pocket he's not seeing as much success doing that. These guys are just all getting faster, man. You're seeing guys that are playing the edge, running 4.4s, 4.5s. It's difficult to get out of that, those type of situations at the quarterback position. Let me see what else we got. Diet Ghost is taking the under. And then Hova Esquire, I want to say it's Hova, says NYG should trade for quarterback Tyler Huntley, maybe a 5th round pick. DJ ain't it. Tyler Huntley has looked really good in all the times that he's come in relief. I want to say that was 2021. I think it was a 2021 season that they played. Yeah, it was 2021 that they played the Cincinnati Bengals in the first round of the playoffs, and it literally came down to a play at the goal line. He ended up fumbling it, and the Bengals took it back to the house, and that play really would have won the game for them. And he's looked really good in preseason as well. I wouldn't give up a 5th round pick for him, I don't think, because I don't see Tyler Huntley being an answer at the quarterback position as a future starter. But he's a guy that can come in relief. I think he could be a decent bridge quarterback too, but like it'd be tough to convince Giants fans like, hey, we're wheeling out Tyler Huntley as a starting quarterback in 2025 while we groom our quarterback. I think it'd be tough. Gregory says, Authentic, will you do a show on Dexter Lawrence? Pros and cons? I don't know about a whole show, but I mean, like, there aren't many cons on Dexter Lawrence, man. That dude he's the best nose tackle in the game. Dexter Lawrence is great. He's fantastic, and he got his bag and whatnot. But I'll make it a point to definitely, dig up and talk about him a little bit more. Lou Mateo says that he says shit. Chapman ran down a running back. Hell yeah, the game got faster. Yeah, that's facts right there. Sebastian said the edge rushers and DNs getting faster is forcing quarterbacks to have to be mobile, unless you have a great O-line. Or a great pocket passer, a guy like Joe Burrow. There aren't many of those guys left. Jared Goff is still out there, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers. There are a few others for sure, but those are the guys that come to mind. Let me see. And then DeIlla's in the building says, I wouldn't trade anything for Huntley. Yeah, I wouldn't do it either. I think as far as it goes for Malik Willis, though, I think he'd be a great asset for the practice squad for the Giants. And another guy that, Brian Dable could start to mold, a guy that actually has a high-level skill set. We'll see what happens. I'm going to be keeping my eyes on the Tennessee Titans. Like I said, it would not surprise me if the Titans brought him back. So we'll see. Let's get off into this next Giant overreaction. I know a lot of people were talking about wide receivers and who was going to get cut. Let's get off into this next one. We're going to address the wide receiver position for the New York Giants. All right, this is a really solid one right here from my homie, BBU Giants one time. Shout out Bree one time, man, out there taking care of all these Giants fans talking nonsense out there. He will definitely scream on you one time. That's my guy. That's my nephew right there one time. So he says here, personally, I think Allen Robinson should make the team over Isaiah Hodgins. Y'all let me know if y'all think this is an overreaction by putting an O in the chat. If you agree with BBU Giants on this one, let me know you taking the under by throwing a U in the chat. Shout out to the beard for this. I think this was from the beard. It's either from the beard or from my girl for this Giants glass. Just classic. Love pouring me a good IPA in that one. Today we got a little Sprite vibes. All right, so Allen Robinson during this preseason, he's had 5 targets for 3 receptions for 23 yards, 0 drops. Drafted in the second round of the 2014 draft, way back when, drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's definitely an older, savvy veteran. He was a wide receiver 1 at one point in his career. He's 31 years old right now. Last real productivity that he had in this league was in 2019 and 2020, where he had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Those came in Chicago. 49 targets last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he had 34 receptions, man. That's a good catch percentage. Seeing him in camp, he's had a pretty good camp, making some catches in practice. He looks like he's in good shape. Saw him get a jet sweep. I think it might have been called back during the Jets game. But he showed you he still got some wheels, and he can still run some pretty good routes out there. I mean, I think that having a guy like this in a young wide receiver room definitely helps out the entire New York Giants wide receiver unit, bringing in guys like, Malik Neighbors, Jalen Hyatt, speedster guys. excuse me, who need to, kind of, I would say, especially on the front of Jalen Hyatt, need to kind of polish out the route running. We can't say that about Malik Neighbors because he just looks fantastic running these routes, man, getting great separation. The one question mark I had about Malik Neighbors, coming out of college was he going to be able to get off the line? Because he played a lot of slot wide receiver, and I thought when we moved him to the outside, maybe his, releases and his hand movement off the line was going to be an issue. But so far, so good, man. That dude, like, his releases have been amazing, man. I don't know if he's working with the route god or not, but that dude is definitely looking real nice off the line. Now, as far as Isaiah Hodgins goes, he's had 8 targets in the preseason, same amount of catches as Allen Robinson, though on many more targets. He has 3 receptions for 17 yards, 0 drops. He was drafted in the 6th round by the Buffalo Bills in 2020. Knows Brian Dable, knows the system very well. He's just 25 years old right now. In 2023, he had a major regression, though. 33 targets, only 21 receptions for 230 yards. He did find the end zone 3 times. Now, when he came in off the practice squad from the Buffalo Bills in 2022, he only played 8 games for the Giants. And he had 33 receptions for 351 yards and 4 touchdowns. So in 8 games in 2022, he did more damage than he did in the entire 2023 season. And he's a guy that you kind of slowly but surely saw the New York Giants give less reps and less snaps to. Comes from the Buffalo practice squad. I think there's a good chance that he might be back on the practice squad. But instead here for the New York Giants, Hodgins went 7 games in 2022 without a reception, and he had 4 games where he didn't even have a target. I think that I got to agree with BBU Giants on this one that, I'm looking for guys that can come in and change the narrative and change the pace of what we're seeing from the New York Giants pass catchers. We went from 2022 where the whole entire fan base to support Daniel Jones was saying that he was throwing to Walmart workers to now in 2023 with lofty expectations for a guy like Jalen Hyatt, myself included. I thought he was going to have a much better year. And then now you enter 2024 with Malik Neighbors, and people think we have one of the better wide receiver rooms in the division. And I don't know if that's quite true yet. I mean, we know Washington just lost Jahan Dotson, but when you look at the Dallas Cowboys and you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, it's really not even close. And they just added Jahan Dotson, to come in and play slot for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think they just made their room that much better. And the Philadelphia Eagles, bar none, have the best wide receiver room in the division. And when you look across the entire conference, I mean, there's just so many, moves being made at the wide receiver position. You even look at a team like Green Bay that's just dealing with straight youth over there, man. Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and then, they got the other homie over there as well. They got 3 young wide receivers over there making moves. Minnesota Vikings just drafted Jordan Addison. They got JJ, Jettas over there one time with Justin Jefferson. Like, yeah, I think it's going to be tough for the New York Giants wide receiver room this year. I don't think it's going to be, peaches and cream like a lot of people think, but I do think Malik Neighbors should be the front runner for this room. Let's see what the chat is talking about here and see if y'all are in agreement with BBU Giants or if y'all think this might be an overreaction. Let's see what we got here. We'll start right here with the Bald Walker. He says, overreaction, Allen Robinson is washed. DeIlla says, you think it's Hodgins that's getting cut, don't you? Yeah, I kind of do, man. I kind of think that, if they carry 7, I think Hodgins will be on the roster. If they carry 6, it's going to be a tough decision that needs to be made here. And from what I'm seeing, I know the Ball Walker said that Allen Robinson is washed, but he's definitely a shell of himself of what he used to be in this league. But is a washed Allen Robinson better than Isaiah Hodgins? And I just think that he might be able to bring more to the table. Ricky514 says he's taking the under on this one. Welvin says it's an overreaction. Similar receivers. I agree with you on that. And Hodgins has a rapport with DJ. That's true, too. But, seeing him kind of phased out in 2023, I don't think that speaks too many volumes or too much volume to the report with Daniel Jones because Jones only played in 6 games. So maybe that is why he took a bit of a step back. Berg says he's taking the push. I think they both have meh value. I like that, but could be a nice tandem red zone package. I like that. Sebastian says overreaction. What does Robinson give that Hodgins doesn't? Veteran, savvy, leadership, locker room stuff is what I would say. As far as skill set on the field, they're both very similar. I don't think either or brings that different of a skill set, but it'd be nice to just see a change of pace, and that's where I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards Allen Robinson. Gregory says it's an overreaction. Lou Mateo says it's an overreaction. Hell yeah, Robinson has a Pro Bowl in his resume. I can't ignore that. I think he's saying he's taking the under on that. JJ Stengel says, I don't think it would hurt with some veteran leadership. I'm there with you. DeIlla says, I don't know if I want either of them. It's a good point. Some players are going to be getting cut from other teams. You might be able to find a more viable option out there on the market. That's a good point, DeIlla. Cookie Monster says he's taking overreaction. Hodgins still hasn't reached his potential. Robinson is done. Give the kid a chance. I think we've given him a chance. 2 years is a good chance. He's shown what he's capable of. I think that the lack of separation from Isaiah Hodgins has been the biggest issue. But I wouldn't be mad either way, to be honest. Hyphen Wade says overreaction, can't just ignore what he's given us in terms of production and consistency and his connection with DJ. I mean, I think the consistency came in 2022. In 2023, there was not much consistency, if any at all. Cookie Monster said, let the Cowboys get Robinson. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says he's taking the push. Hard to know what the coaching staff is looking at for wide receiver 4 or 5. I look at it as wide receiver 5, 6. Because I think Isaiah McKenzie's got wide receiver 4, or wide receiver 5 actually, locked up. So I'm looking at it as Neighbors at 1, Slayton at 2, Wandale at 3, Hyatt at 4, Isaiah McKenzie at 5. So I think they're fighting for that 6th spot, to be honest. And I don't think it will hurt if you keep 7 wide receivers on this roster. Guys get hurt and stuff like that. You're going to need people to step up. Nova Nebula said, I prefer Hodgins. He's younger, has chemistry with Jones, and has a pretty good red zone target. I do like Robinson, though. If we could keep more receivers, then yeah. But as of now, nah. I'm with you on that, okay? Deaton says he's taking the under. I like the veteran presence he brings to a young wide receiver room. That's one of the key factors for me. Rob says he's taking the under. If the point about his mentorship in the wide receiver room is real, the development of players like Neighbors and Hyatt is more important than whatever Hodgins will give you on the field. I couldn't have said that better, man. I really like that right there. John says he's taking the push. About the same, in my opinion. Who's a better run blocker? Yeah, that's a good point. I'd have to look into that. Maybe get some PFF numbers, try to look at some of these snaps. I don't pay attention to too much run blocking on the outside from wide receivers that much. Pino Picker says it's an overreaction. I think he's a great backup and can teach the guys along the way, but he's on the back end of his career. Give him some PT at tight end, though. At tight end, though. That's wild. Nova Nebula says, I think the receiver room is Neighbors, Hyatt, Wandale, Slayton, Hodgins, and McKenzie for special teams and a backup slot and Gunner as a returner. Yeah, and you saw Isaiah McKenzie is doing a lot of the punt return, so I don't think you need to double dip on the punt returner situation. I think just choose one of them, and if I had to do it, it would be Isaiah McKenzie. Diet Ghost says he feels like Hodgins commits too many penalties. That's a real thing there. The Bald Walker says, to be honest, I hear you on guys to change the narrative, but Robinson isn't that guy anymore. Yeah, he's not going to come in there and be a wide receiver 1, but I think being a guy that gets a few reps here and there, a wide receiver 5 type of guy, maybe somebody gets injured, I think he's a guy that could step up. Primetime says it's an overreaction. Hodgins is pretty good red zone target. Yeah, he is. He had 3 touchdowns in a very, to performance year last year, so he's definitely shown he can get in the end zone. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says, has Hodgins had many red zone targets? I'd have to go look into it, but he definitely was Daniel's guy in 2022 on the back half of that season, man. Like when Daniel Jones would buy time, it seemed like Hodgins was on the receiving end of a few of those touchdowns for sure. DeIlla talking about Dontavian Wicks on his way to being a monster. Yeah, that's the other wide receiver out there in Green Bay. Love Dontavian Wicks. Bluegrass said, feel free to like and subscribe if you dig the vibe. Oh, you just dropping bars, man. I like that. Y'all, you know what it is, man. We're not in it for likes. We're in it for life. But if y'all want to click the like button, do your thing. Lucas, man. Lucas, where you been, brother? Where you been, my guy? Lucas is in the building, man. All the way from across the pond, man. Big salute to you, fam. I appreciate you pulling up. We talked about the CeeDee Lamb contract, man. Got $100 million guaranteed. That's looking really good for CeeDee, man. Congrats to him and salute to him for getting that bag one time, man. Shout out to Lucas for pulling up, rocking out with us, man. Nova Nebula says, I do like the idea of Hodgins on the practice squad and Robinson on the active roster, so I guess I should have taken a push. And if they don't keep Gunner, I definitely want Allen Robinson. Yup. I like that. That's a really good way to end that segment right there, man. I'm with you on that as well. So kind of a split room on that one right there about Allen Robinson. over Isaiah Hodgins. Shout out to the homie Jabri one time, BBU in the building, man, dropping a little bit of knowledge on us here and telling us his perspective on things. And I love how he started it by saying, personally, I think, and I agree with him on this one. I'm going to say that I'm taking the under on this one, and I would rather have Allen Robinson on the roster over Isaiah Hodgins. All right, so we got one more left. It's going to be a bit of a two-part overreaction, so you might want to pump the brakes when you first see it. We're going to talk about the Giants and 2024 and what the expectations are for them as an entire team. Let's get off into this last Giant overreaction. This one comes from my good brother Mike on Twitter. Always, being the I won't even say a devil's advocate, but Mike is a guy that definitely sees things glass half empty. And he's looking at this season like it's not going to be a really good season. And I can understand that perspective. Mike says it's pretty clear the Giants are going to be a bottom two team, bad roster depth, and bad quarterbacks. Let me know what y'all thinking about this one in the chat. I got just a few things to talk about with this one. Being bottom two is really tough. Now, there are a lot of teams that were at the bottom of the league last year that really improved this year. Teams like the Panthers, teams like the Chicago Bears. Let me think about other bottom type of rosters. The Saints, I think, are a team that is very likely looking at being a bottom 2 to 3 type of team this year. And the New York Giants, obviously the Commanders were a team that was sitting at the bottom of the league as well last year, and they've made improvements, new coaching staff, new ownership, new quarterback. Definitely spent a lot of money here, and they still got a ton of money left. Brought in some defensive pieces at the linebacker position, but I'm going to go ahead and say it right off the bat. I don't think that this is an overreaction. It won't surprise me if the Giants get to 7 wins, though, 8 wins, 9 wins, or something like that. And I don't think it should surprise anybody. I mean, they won 6 games last year with Tommy DeVito and Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, and very poor offensive line play. I think what hurts the Giants this year is the schedule is a lot more difficult. You know, you lost Saquon Barkley, you lost Xavier McKinney, and you supplemented them with Brian Burns and drafted Malik Neighbors with the 6th overall selection. And I like those moves, but Pat Leonard was talking about this too. Like, every time the Giants add a piece or add a weapon, they lose one. And in this case, you can't forget, we lost Darren Waller as well. And yeah, we added Theo Johnson in the draft, but what I'm seeing from Theo Johnson thus far, from just a physical type of standpoint in the preseason, is he looks a bit slow. The game is moving really fast around him. This guy's not even getting out of his routes before the ball is let go. And I'm just seeing a guy that might take a little bit of time. They spent draft capital on Daniel Bellinger, the first draft that Joe Shane and Brian Dable got here. And then they traded a 3rd-round pick for Darren Waller, which was the pick that we got from the Kansas City Chiefs for Kadarius Toney. You're losing a lot of stuff while still trying to build up the roster. Can your youthful wide receiver guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt take that next step and really be viable options for the quarterback to be wide receiver 2s? I don't know. And you also got to look at the other end of the spectrum as well. Like, is the quarterback holding these guys back as well? Can Daniel Jones come out there and have a bounce-back year to put the Giants in position to win some games and possibly try to get to the playoffs? I wouldn't rule it out, but like I said, I wouldn't bank on it either. Now, I did want to show y'all that this is like a 2-part type of overreaction. I will tap into the chat before I get to this next one that comes from Bad Dog. Let me see what we got here. Let me wheel back just a couple. Okay, so Nova Nebula says, I do like the idea of Hodgins. Okay, we got this one already. The Illa said, our depth on this roster overall is just horrific. We're too busy plugging holes every year to try to make this team a competitive team, and we're not bringing in any talent to force the stale players out. That's a really good point, man. Like, the depth worries me more than anything. I talked about this on Bleach Report. Every unit, every one of our units on this Giants team is one injury away from looking very pathetic. Like, if you lose an edge rusher, if you lose an edge rusher like Kayvon Thibodeau or Brian Burns, the depth coming in, Boogie Basham, Azeez Ojulari, you talking about a drastic fall off. If you were to lose a guy like Dexter Lawrence, my God, I don't know what we're going to do. Let's go to the linebackers. If Micah McFadden is dealing with injuries entering the year, or Bobby Okereke ends up getting injured, that linebacker core looks absolute trash. You already got Deontay Johnson, who was looking like a guy coming out of training camp dealing with an ankle injury. This kid who shined, Cloyd, in the last preseason game. What can we expect from him if he has to come in and actually get, realistic reps as a starter? And then they drafted Darius Muasawa, who came in the game when Deontay Johnson, or no, it was Micah McFadden who ended up getting hurt. And you just didn't hear his name. I got to go back and look at the All-22 a little bit more, but you just didn't hear his name much. So linebackers are another one. The cornerback unit, if we lose any one of our starting corners, we're cooked already going into the season at the cornerback position. Our safeties, if you lose a guy who's considered to be a leader like Jason Pinnock, it will be super detrimental to this team. Go to the quarterback position. You lose Daniel Jones, the backups is a problem. Running backs, Motor, the guys behind him, I don't got much faith in many of those guys. Tyrone Tracy seems to be like he could be a guy, but he's dealing with an injury himself. Wide receivers, obviously, you lose any one of the big three of the wide receivers for the Giants is going to be a problem. So I'm right there with you on this. Our depth is absolutely horrific, and I think those are the type of things that the people who are like already out on Joe Shane, they're putting that lack of addressing those positions underneath a microscope, and I understand it for sure. Bluegrass says he's taking the overreaction on this one. Bergs is taking the push. Berg says every team made improvements, but, we're going to win this 3 meaningless games at the end of the season. Yeah, and man, like when I was seeing Drake May last night at formerly known as FedEx Field, that's all I could think about was like, damn, this dude could have been a Giant, man. We were right there. The Giants had 2 wins, and the season was like winding down to an end. And we were even thinking, man, we might get Caleb Williams. We're going to have a pick at one of these 3 quarterbacks. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. It's tough that we got to go into this year with this, but, I guess we got to think positive and do what we do. Muhammad Ali, the champ, is here, says, overreaction. I don't know about bottom 2. Yeah, and I think that's the part to question for sure. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets is taking a push. We should have more faith in Dable. Seemingly, he's going to get solid effort from his team. And I do think that's a thing. Like, that's why I brought up the 6 wins last year, because that team from last year should have won 2 games, and Brian Dable found a way. Against some good competition, too. You look at the game against the Buffalo Bills. Granted, it was a loss. Still competed. Went out there against the Rams in a game that we lost as well and still competed. And then on Monday night, Tommy DeVito against the Green Bay Packers, like a team that was in the playoffs, knocked out the Dallas Cowboys in the wild card round. We went out there and took care of business. So I do have faith in Brian Dable that he can go out there and get some wins. Leon says he can push. Diet Ghost says the expectation is that the defense will get worn out from the same garbage offense we've had. Hot take, we won't be able to beat up on Washington anymore. Yeah, I agree with you on that, especially about Washington. I thought last year there was no way we were going to sweep the Commanders, and we ended up doing it. And, the Commanders did clean house before the trade deadline, and I do think that hurt their chances going up against the Giants, especially in the second matchup. But, yeah, I think those days are kind of over, too. We've had a good run here against the Commanders. That's been Daniel Jones, the way that he can really, really light up the scoreboard has been when he's gone up against the Washington Commanders. So I like that. It's a good statement, Diet Ghost. OG Knockout said he's taking the push. The Ball Walker says overreaction. I like the team overall. We got 2 major concerns in the secondary and quarterback play that will hold us back and cost us games. But I have a hard time seeing us as a bottom 2 team, but maybe. That's a very rational take. I like that. Ricky514 taking the push. The Illa says, I think at best we're the 12th best team in the NFC. If we're lucky. 12th best. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I like that assessment as of now. We'll see how things go. You never know. Injuries happen on other teams. There's so much, interchanging parts that happen around the NFL that you never really know. But when I look at us competing against our division in particular, we look like the worst team in the division. The Ball Walker says, I'm confusing that with wins. Cookie Monster says, I'm taking the under. Agreed. Giants have a long way to go to be good again. All it takes is one superstar from either defense or offense to get hurt, and the season will be chaos. Yes, that's a really solid point right there. John says he's taking the push one time. Dable is feeling the heat, and I think he gets as much as he can from his team, hence he's calling the plays this season. Yeah, the heat is definitely there. The kitchen is cooking right now. And Brian Dable's like, you know what? I've been providing these ingredients. I've been, going over how to cook the meal. Let me just go in the kitchen and cook the meal. And I think that, placing that emphasis on calling plays definitely shows that he's probably a little bit worried about that. And the Bald Walker says he's going to take the push for now. Evan Spitzberg says it's an overreaction. Giants find a way to win at least 4 games a season. I say 6 to 7. I'm right there with you. And I do think it's a bit of an overreaction to think that they're going to be a bottom 2 team. But who's to say that, like, maybe 6 wins is not bottom 2? You know, I think a lot of these teams got better this year. I expect the Carolina Panthers to compete. They addressed wide receiver in the draft in a major way, brought in a couple of pieces. I don't think they're going to be the worst team in the league this year. I think Bryce Young's looked really good during the preseason, and second year should look a lot better. Chris TV, or King Chris TV, says bottom 2, definitely. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It definitely wouldn't surprise me. Shout out to the homie BT Giants in the building one time. My homie Antonio's in the building. What's going on, fam? Hope all is well. Gregory said this is a push. Way too early to judge this. Hyphen Wade says this is a push. Bottom half roster construction, yes, but bottom 2 team, I can't go that far yet. If Jones gets hurt again or plays extremely poor, then I'll say that. I like that. Nova Nebula said, LOL. I get it. We're not expecting much, but bottom 2 is insane. This team committed 3 self-inflicted mistakes on the last play in 3 games that kept them out of the playoffs, even with all the BS. You could look at it like that, right? But I don't look at football like that. Like, a game that comes down to the last play, to me, does not say that the team was just a play away from, making it to the playoffs if you look at those 3 games like that. Imagine if you just do that with every game. You could find games that the Giants won that they, you could put in the other side of the column and make them L's. So, for me, I respect the opinion, but I just don't look at football like that. Now, bottom 2 is not insane either, I don't think. I mean, where were the Giants last year? They were the 6th worst team in the NFL. So I don't see how bottom 2 is insane. I think if the statement on the screen said top 2, all right, now we could be like, man, yeah, this is an insane take. But I don't think it's insane to think that they could be a bottom 2 team. They were a bottom 2 team like entering week 12 last year. And, being bottom 6, you're just 4 slots away from being bottom 2. And the real question is did the Giants get better this year by losing Saquon and McKinney and Darren Waller, and then bringing in Neighbors, and then bringing in Brian Burns, addressing the offensive line with Jermaine Illuminor, John Runyon Jr., Aaron Stinney, Greg Van Roten, and others? Is that going to bolster this roster into, and put them on a trajectory to be a better team than they were last season? I don't know. I do think that the schedule this year is a bit more difficult too, and that's something to keep your eyes on. We're going to go over that in a second here. Welvin said he's taking the push. We suck, but we'll get more than 2 to 3 wins. Yeah, I like that. That's pretty fair thinking. OG Knockout says time to clean house and start all over. That would be a tough decision, and I think that if the Giants are to clean house or were to clean house, they should have did it before these big contracts. I mean, you already, you gave Andrew Thomas the contract. You gave Dexter Lawrence a contract. You brought in Brian Burns now for $28 million a year. Bobby Okereke is making some pretty nice money. You got Daniel Jones on the $40 million a year. I don't know if you can really do that right now. I don't think you can clean house. Guys like Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence are probably pieces for the foreseeable future. I think at least another 4 years, I would say. And then maybe you could try to consider cleaning the house if things go in this same direction for the next 3 to 4 years. But right now, I think it's tough. Let me see. Mike says that Theo take is way too early, fam. Certain things are takes and certain things aren't. That's just my assessment of what I'm seeing so far. Dude looks slow out the blocks, man. And in Penn State at college, he looked to be that too. Like, Theo Johnson was high on a few people's radars. Bobby from Talking Giants especially was really high on Theo Johnson. And I'm not saying it's like over for him, but there were tight ends that I looked at as a better prospect of what we need on this offense. You got a guy like Malik Neighbors out there. I would like a tight end on the field that can block particularly well, but also be able to stretch the field and be able to run those seam routes right down the teeth of these defenses, right? I thought Tanner McLaughlin was a better option for that, and I think he went in the 7th round to the Cincinnati Bengals. But I'm not like out on Theo or nothing. I don't even want to really call it a take. It's just what I'm seeing so far. Like, same thing with Tyler Nubin. Like, there's just not much hype there, and like, it's just not. It's not giving me a lot of confidence going into the year. But I think that they can both be good players in this league. But when I look at the 2024 draft class for the Giants in total, I'm worried. I think Malik Neighbors will be a guy, but like every other pick, I'm worried about every other pick. Rob says it's an overreaction. The Giants have talent. I think 6 wins is their floor like last year. I think that'll be the median for me would be 6. I think the floor could be somewhere around 4. Cookie Monster says it's sad we've become the Cleveland Browns of old. Yeah, that is sad. Diego says he's taking the under. DeIlla says, and for most first-year tight ends, that's how it is. That's one of the toughest positions to transfer from college to the NFL. And that's a really good point of why I'm not like, I don't even want to look at it as a take, like I said. I'm not ditching out on Theo Johnson. I mean, he's a massive body, 250, 60 pounds. He's like 6'6". You should be able to find a way to make that work, you know. But reminds me a lot of Cole Turner from the Washington Commanders, who we saw last night. He made a couple of good catches too, but sometimes those bigger guys like that, when they're not nimble on their feet, cannot be a real threat in the passing game. King Chris TV says every other team and third string looked competitive for their third preseason game, and we looked like some shit. Yeah, we did. I thought the Commanders looked really bad with their third team yesterday too, outside of when they got to the fourth quarter. But yeah, I can't argue that take. EC says he's taking the push. I think we have to wait and see how injuries play out. Giants always have them, and depth is a concern. When we lose our best pieces, things seem to unravel quickly. Yeah, that's a good point. And Diego says he's right. There's no one that can replace our starters. Antonio says it's sad that there's just a I don't know on the progression of anything positive that has to do with the team. Yeah. I mean, the defensive front is probably the only unit where you're like, yeah, feel pretty good about them. Malik Neighbors, feel good about Malik Neighbors. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough being a Giants fan these days, y'all. Like, I had a homie ask me, like, man, why you always reporting the negative stuff? I told y'all about this earlier in the stream, and I'm just like, bro, it's been negative. And I'm not going to try to come out here and polish a turd, just not the vibes. Evan says that depth is concerning. He agrees. Antonio says it's over. Tyrone said too many bad drafts over the last 7 years. That's a fact. Oh, my God. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says depth equals exactly why we shouldn't be attempting to run a guy like Slayton off the team. And you can see it. That's what they're trying to do. And then, like, reliable, time after time out here making plays. Like, almost like the thought that just came to my mind would have been like the hottest take ever. And I'll throw it out there, just not leave y'all in the dark, right? But don't hold me to this. Right now, with what you've seen from Jalen Hyatt, why would you keep him on the team over Darius Slayton? Right? Like, Darius Slayton, I understand he's getting a little bit older. He was drafted in the same draft class as Daniel Jones in 2019. So Darius Slayton's not like an old guy, but he's entering veteranship. But, like, he's produced at a higher value than a guy like Jalen Hyatt. But Jalen Hyatt has only been on his team for one full season. So it's just something to think about. But, like, if we go into another season and Jalen Hyatt has pedestrian-like numbers like he did this past year, not excelling on the intermediate routes, still just being a guy who's a burner, like, that's why I was telling people, like, people were saying that Darius Slayton's a wide receiver 4 entering the year. And I'm like, yo, what are y'all smoking on? What makes it that we should put Jalen Hyatt over Darius Slayton right now? I don't think there's anything. So good point here by No Mets, No Nets, No Jets. Shout out to the homie Joe Winograd one time in the building for the $10 super chat. I think that's the highest one of the day, man. Salute to you for supporting the channel. He said, I loved watching your stream before I go in for my shift these last 2 Mondays, bro. Love your content, man. Are you going live every Monday? Yes. So during the season, every Monday we go live at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do this show right here, the Giant Overreaction. We do preview shows every Tuesday and every Thursday. We do the recaps. Every Tuesday we do the recaps from the previous week. Every Thursday we do the preview for the upcoming week. And then on Sundays we do a fantasy football show that's a little bit more laid back, where we just kind of talk about, what guys we should start in our fantasy lineups and just take questions from the chat and whatnot. And then we go and do pick'ems for every game. So during the season, man, we're extremely active over here. It's going to be 4 days a week here. And also on Bleacher Report, they got me doing 2 streams a week on Bleacher Report too. So, like, yeah, if you're digging the vibes, man, I'm sure you already subscribe, but pull up, rock out with us on Mondays for sure. Our Tuesday shows with the beard are amazing, doing the recaps. And our Thursday shows, when we do the previews, are really fun. It's going to be an interesting opening day weekend as well, because we have 4 days straight of football for opening day weekend. They're going Thursday through Sunday this week to open up the NFL, which is going to be really cool. So pull up, rock out with us, man. I definitely appreciate you supporting the channel and, giving us $10 to just say that, man. That means a lot. Goes a long way, brother. Appreciate you, fam. Let me see what else we got here. Diet Ghost taking the under. says we get Dable fired, too. Lou Mateo says it sucks to believe the season hasn't even started, to think about the season is already over. Yeah, just like I encourage people, Sal's been talking about this a lot from He's a Giant, like, just have fun this year, and like, I would just not set the expectations extremely high, but go into Sundays, root for your team, man. We're all Giants fans. We want to see the Giants go out there and win. We want to see all the players excel. And, just be prepared for the worst at the same time, but enjoy the season. It's a young team, and they're trying to develop and get into the right direction to be able to, start to compete for championships. I don't see that happening this year, but you never know, man. The NFL, every year there's a team that pops up out of nowhere. There's always like 7 teams that made the playoffs from the year before that don't make the playoffs, and all you can do is really hope that the New York Giants will be one of those teams when it's all said and done. Berg says he's taking the push. Or James says he's taking the push. Bergs is right on. We will definitely win 3 meaningless games, and some will cheer, scratching my head. Yeah, that's a thing, man. That's definitely a thing. Deilla says that I said before the draft this team should have gone BPA on every draft pick just to evaluate the overall talent of the roster. We decided to plug holes, and it's going to kill us in the end. Y'all, go subscribe to Deilla MYG. Just a really real channel. Not all the bells and whistles and all that shit, but like direct, straightforward talk on the New York Giants. I try to suggest to everybody to go check out Deilla's video on Joe Schoen when we hired Joe Schoen. It's a really great video that has great foresight on it. And I think Deilla's doing great things over there on his channel. Deilla, so I wanted to bring this to your attention too. I brought it up to James a little bit earlier because Online Big Blue was talking about the rule of 51 and talking about where we are at as far as the salary cap goes. And you mentioned it in one of the comments on one of our videos, and we did a lot of digging on this. And I commend Tim from Online Big Blue for bringing it to people's attention to consider thinking about the rule of 51 and counting up the actual contracts that are on, the Giants' books right now. But I think he made a grand mistake, and I think he's doubling down on it a bit here too, because I've tried to bring this to his attention. And I talked to Mason about it. Mason is pretty much like the guy I consider to be the cap guru for the New York Giants. And Mason was like, nah, what Tim from Online Big Blue was saying is inaccurate. And we're trying to bring it to his attention, but it seems like the comments keep getting deleted on that video, which is kind of interesting. But when Tim is counting up the salaries for the New York Giants, he's not adding up every contract. He's looking at the numbers on Spotrac, which are incorrect because they are listing all 91 contracts on the roster right now actively for the New York Giants. So when he came to that conclusion that the New York Giants are going to be somewhere, I think he said between negative $23 and $30 million entering next year, and that might keep Daniel Jones on the roster because they'll have to restructure his contract, and bringing up the rule of 51, he's not doing the math on the contracts. Go in and look at the contracts on Over the Cap, which is what I had to do. And I got schooled on this stuff. I'm not sitting up here telling y'all like I'm some cap guru, but I got schooled on this stuff from Mason, who I consider to be a cap guru. He knows everything there is to know about the cap as far as like speaking on that from a perspective of a fan. I don't know anybody else that knows the cap like Mason. And I went through, me and Sal both did it, went through and added up every one of the contracts, and it does not come to that number that Tim is saying. There's I won't say a misprint on Spotrac, but right now, Spotrac is adding up every contract that is active on the New York Giants roster, which is 91 contracts. So when it comes time when we cut the roster down to 53 tomorrow, you'll see that they're going to update those numbers, and the Giants won't be negative 20+ million when it comes to salary cap. They're going to be somewhere around having about $13 million. So I know you commented on it. You left a paragraph on it, and I think that's something that, the real football nerds probably wanted some of that information on that. So do a little digging into that, Deilla, and check it out. And I would recommend, as Mason did to me, when you look at contracts and numbers, always go to Over the Cap over Spotrac. Over the Cap has more accurate numbers. But shout out to Deilla. Make sure y'all go subscribe to him too. Sebastian says, if Daniels has the rookie season, I think he will have. Let me start that again. If Daniels has the rookie season I think he will have, we will finish last in the division this year. I think that's very possible. Very possible. OG Knockout says, I think the Giants will be 1-4 by week 6. Remember, I said that. So entering week 6 before we play the week 6 game, yeah, I think it's possible. I think they could be 2-2. I think they could be 0-5. I think it could be 2-3, I'll say. Now that we're talking about week 5 entering week 6. Yeah, and I think they could be 0-5 as well. Like, those first 2 games are so important. If the Giants lose to Minnesota, I think that the morale around the team and the confidence will be gone. And then you got a tough stretch. Weeks 3 through 7 is an extremely tough stretch. We're going to go over the schedule here in a second, too, so hang tight. Let me see if there's any others on this. Gregory said that losing Barkley is going to be hard to make up. Daniel Jones is going to get all the attention from the defense. Teams will not respect the run game. Yeah. I'm unfortunately, that's how I see it as well. I think that's how things are going to pan out. David Thice says Dak in 2025. I would welcome it. I just don't think Dak would come play for a franchise like this that he has owned. Like, he's owned the Giants. 11 straight wins, I think it is for Dak Prescott. 11-2 in his career. Has not lost to the Giants since his rookie year. If you're Dak Prescott, do you think coming to the Giants you'll be able to compete for a Super Bowl? I don't think so. Let me see what else we got here. Gino 150 says, what's the chances of the GM and coach being fired this season? I would say slim to none. I think that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen have afforded an extra year. Whatever they thought it was before, I think they've afforded an extra year. Brian Daboll especially. You went out there, got coach of the year, 9 wins, playoff berth, first one since 2016, playoff win in impressive fashion. Then you got dog walk by the Philadelphia Eagles, which most people would have thought that was going to happen. Then you come back your sophomore season, you lose your quarterback who you just gave a big contract to, you lose your backup quarterback, plenty of injuries across the board from Darren Waller and multiple other players, and you still won 6 games. I think that John Mara is looking at this like, I can't keep firing coaches. And we saw that with Joe Judge. We saw it with Pat Shurmur, a couple of years before that as well. You saw it with Ben McAdoo. So you can't keep doing that. And I think that that's lingering in the back of John Mara's mind, which will give Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen at least another season. I would think that, like, the firing of those 2 guys won't be talked about until maybe middle to end of 2025 season if things continue to go in the wrong direction. James Williams says only the Giants will get rid of their best player in Saquon and their best receiver over 4 years and keep a subpar quarterback. Yeah, I feel you on that. Only the Giants. John says, I'm lucky the NY Rangers and Knicks season starts in October and November to keep my sanity from the Giants. Nova Nebula says that Slayton is definitely wide receiver 2. Absolutely agree with you on that. Dom Doc is in the building. That looks like a new name. What's going on, Dom? Hope all is well with you. Says Jalen Hyatt with a big arm quarterback would be nice, 100%. Yes, that's a great point, man. Like, he needs a guy that's like, you get those single high safeties, middle of the field close type of looks, and you throw that ball 50 yards down the field, 60 down the field. I mean, he showed that in college at Tennessee that was his, primary skill set. And if you remember when he was working out with the Dallas Cowboys, the wide receiver coach for the Cowboys said that, like, you know who you are. And I think that teams know who he is. So if you don't have a quarterback that's willing to threaten and throw the ball down the field, it's ultimately going to make Jalen Hyatt look like a much worse wide receiver than he really is. The Illa says you can't come out here and talk positively about the Giants and have people legitimately take you seriously. You can't just be a tool bag and hype up this team just because you're a fan. Yeah, and I try to do that as well. Like, you really look foolish when you do that. And there have been people that have, content creators in the community who just, like, it's all fluff throughout the whole entire year and have done it for 2 years. And now I think that they're I was going to say benefiting, but that's not really the right word. They're on the receiving end of a lot of scrutiny now. And what's wild is when I first got on Bleacher Report last season, my takes were like, I don't think this is a good team from onset, from the beginning of the year. And a lot of people were still riding the hype from 2022. So a lot of my takes were looked at as like, yo, this guy does not know ball. Like, that's how the Bleacher Report community was like, man, this dude's always negative. He's always talking about this team's not going nowhere this year, that last year was a bit of fugazi hype and whatnot. So my first couple of months on Bleacher Report, my first year on Bleacher Report was a lot of scrutiny towards me because it was like, all this dude does is talk about how bad the Giants are. And then the weeks went on. The weeks went on, and the Giants played poor football. And then by the time we got to the end of the season, we're sitting at a 6-win team, luckily. But we know that this team was not really a 6-win team when you look at it and try to address it, more like a 3-4-win team. So what I'm starting to see now is like a lot of those people are starting to come around on Bleacher Report. And they're starting to be like, there was a dude today that asked, he was like, is there anybody in the Bleacher Report community that has a line to Authentic? I really think he's a cool dude, and I just want him to unblock me. But like before, when I first got there, the shit that they were saying on some of these posts, I was like, I'm not going to just sit up here and just be looking at this shit all year. So like when you attack my character, it's just an automatic, I'm going to block you. But I went in and I unblocked this kid today because simply he was a little bit humble enough to be like, damn, like he kind of foresaw some things that maybe we didn't see. And even the front office didn't see. You can tell that Joe Shane and Brian Dable were kind of smelling their shit and thinking it don't stink going into 2023. And they paid this quarterback this lofty contract, expecting him to become better at what he had already put on paper. And the projection, you know, was expected for him to be a better player and go out there and put up better and bigger numbers. And he fell completely flat. And I'm not happy about that. I'm not, you know, although I did not want Daniel Jones to sign a contract, it doesn't make me happy to see him fail. He's the quarterback of my team, and I want to win games. So, you know, it's just interesting to see, you know, things kind of pivot 180. Like during the time when a lot of these content creators that really treat content creation like being a mascot, like, oh, it's all positive. This is great. Look at this Joe Shane masterclass, fleece this and all that, right? They were reaping the benefits of it during 2022. And now I think things are kind of coming full circle a little bit, or maybe half circle in this case. And, you know, a lot of people don't want to face the noise now, but I'm gonna always be here. Like whether I'm right, wrong, indifferent, whatever it is, I'll always show up. And if I'm wrong on something, I'll be the first one to come up here and be like, man, I was completely wrong on that. Like, you know, I had to take at the beginning of 2023 where I said, I think the Giants already possibly have their wide receiver one on the roster now with Jalen Hyatt. And that take backfired. That was inaccurate. And, you know, you got to just eat those takes and just keep it pushing and keep it moving. Learn from them. You know what I'm saying? Tim Frith, 24, is in the building. That's another new face. What's going on, fam? He says the Giants' record prediction for him is 2-15. Jeez. 2 wins, man. Giants go out there and get 2 wins. It's not going to be no Authentic in the Beard off-season content. I'm going to keep it funky. They got to win more than 2 games. Emmanuel Reese is in the building one time, says, in what situation do you see we start to question Joe Shane and his job security? The questioning of Joe Shane has already happened. For me and for a lot of people I know, the drafts have been poor. Some of the contracts have been good. Some of them have not. The trade for Isaiah Simmons is still a pretty big question mark right now. I mean, it was just a 7th round draft pick, so it's not that bad. It's really the Daniel Jones contract that has been the biggest thing, and the drafts, I think. So people are already questioning it. As far as his job security, I would say, like I just told the last dude, going into the middle of 2025, I think that's when, if things are looking, you know, still poor like they are now, I think people will start to question it, and John Mara himself will. Let me see what else we got. Cookie Monster says he subscribed to Da'Illa. Y'all should all do yourself that favor, man. Da'illa's grinding out here, man. He be doing content while he at work and all of that, man. So shout out to Cookie Monster for that gesture right there. I think Da'Illa puts out really realistic content. Dom Doc says things just haven't looked good with key players like all of the 2022 draft. Yeah, the 2022 draft, man, is 10 or 11 picks. And really all you have to show is Kayvon Thibodeau. So real tough on that front. I'll highlight this one because I don't like to avoid the tough comments, but Prince Castro says that Tim isn't interested in the truth. He's only running a narrative and staying in the DJ Hate character. I mean, I don't get that normally from Tim, from Online Big Blue, but this one is really weird. Like, I just thought this one was weird, and I hope that, you know, I just hope it's something like I don't know. I just hope it's something different than him deleting the comments. Like, I posted on there twice. Like, I went back to edit the comment and looked for it, couldn't find it. Then I posted updated numbers on it, and it got deleted again. I'm just like, maybe I'm blocked. I don't know. But Mason was telling me the same thing. Like, he tried to tell him too, and it got deleted. So we'll see what's up with that. But I think Tim from Online Big Blue is a really good content creator, and I think he's committed and, loyal to cooking up the content. You get good videos from him just about every week. And I do think there's a bit of sometimes like a I'm looking down on you type of thing going on over there a little bit, but I think that just comes in the confidence in what he's doing. He puts in the time, and I think, sometimes those lines can get a little bit blurred, but that the salary cap stuff was one that, I brought it up to the spaces because I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And at first I brought it up to Sal, and Sal was like, man, maybe there's a little bit of validity to this. We brought it up in the spaces. Then he came into the spaces and he couldn't break down the numbers. That was the tough part about it. He came into the space and I wasn't there, but the homies were telling me like he couldn't tell them the numbers, and he said he was like on the beach, so he couldn't really look at the numbers right now. But he gave some roundabout approximate type of numbers. And then Mason came in after and was like, all that was complete bullshit, and broke it down. So I chimed in and I jumped into spaces and I'm like, Mason, look, like, I want to try to add this up myself, because we were talking about the math, not mathing, but a lot of people didn't want to go do the math because you're talking about adding up, 53 of the top contracts for the New York Giants. It's a lot of millions, right? And Mason was like, this is how you do it. And I asked a lot of questions in front of a pretty large audience in that Twitter spaces. And I think, I got to commend him again for just bringing it up, because it's not the normal day-to-day talk that you get, about the New York Giants, like deep dives into the salary cap like that. And thank God for Mason for being there. Mason has done a ton for me. Mason is one of my favorite people in the Giants community, man. He's all about spreading accuracy and truth. And I think that's where me and him really see eye to eye, and why we talk ball a lot on a daily basis. And he broke it down and he was like, this is how you want to add it up. And then I went and had dinner and I added it up and I was like, damn, those numbers are way off. So I like what Tim's doing. So no shade to Tim, but it's just puzzling that those comments were looking like they got deleted. Let me see. Evan said, is the dead cap hit taking place as well? I don't know if you're talking about Daniel Jones with that one. When you add up all the dead cap hits for the Giants contracts, it's somewhere around like 20-something million this year. And then next year is when the Giants have the chance to part ways with Daniel Jones. It's the lowest dead cap hit that we would have if we were to cut him from the roster. I think it's right around 20-something million. So, I think that the only lane for them to do that outside of restructuring the contract next year would be to part ways. DeIlla says, authentic, thank you for clarifying that, because Tim is typically on point when it comes to the cap. Yeah, that is true. And he said, I'm definitely relieved that's not the case. Yeah, I was too, man. You don't want to be negative $30 million. In cap space. That's not a good look. And I would think that Joe Shane's a smarter man than that. Let me see what else we got, and then we'll move on just a little bit here. John says, I still don't understand why the Pats drafted Joe Milton. What would his price tag be? Price tag wouldn't be nothing. You'd probably have to trade for him. Because I don't think they're going to cut him, but don't rule it out. They still got Bailey Zappi on the roster right now. And he hasn't looked good in preseason. Joe Milton has, of all the quarterbacks around the entire 2024 NFL draft, I'd say Joe Milton has probably looked the worst of all the quarterbacks. But he has a big arm and he has a skill set, that I think you could mold and build upon. It's very Malik Willis-like. It's going to be tough for them. Zappi's been a guy that, has been pretty serviceable, I guess, at the backup position. But if you're looking for future thinking, I think you got to get rid of Bailey Zappi. And they're trying to do that Kirk Cousins RG3 type of thing, a little bit of reassurance at the quarterback position. OG says, how many interceptions will Daniel Jones have this year? It's no telling, because is he going to even play the full year? It's like, I don't know. I would say 20, if he plays the whole year, 21 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. I see Adam Costas in the building one time. Shout out to Adam, man. Appreciate you pulling up. I think I was reading two comments at one time right there. Like one eye on one comment, looked like Biggie out here. Let me see what else we got. Yeah, showing some love for yeah, now they talking about the content creators. Yeah, I see y'all. I agree with a lot of the stuff y'all saying in the comments, though, yeah. Let me see. DeIlla says, authentic, that's why I always tune into your stuff when I can. No fluff, and you tell it like it is. One of the best out there doing it, and you don't get the respect you deserve. It's, whatever it is, it's all good. I do think that I get the respect. I think that a lot of Giants fans, though, they kind of tend to stay away from this kind of content because it's too real, and a lot of people don't want to face the truth, and like they don't want to face, somebody that's thinking about things even a little bit pessimistic or, thinking about worst case scenario. And I approach everything like that. I approach life like that. Like, but what about if like this goes wrong? It's like, would you hit the road for a 6-hour trip without a spare tire in the trunk? You will be a damn fool to do that. Because then when you're on the side of the road and you got to call AAA or whatever to come over there and, try to find a way to get your car off the road, now you can't even just change the flat tire and get back on the road. Now you got to get a tow truck. You got to pay to get it out the lot. You got to do all this extra shit. That's just how I look at life, man. And salute to the people that see it the same way or at least can respect that perspective at all. The Ball Walker says, got to slide off. Good vibing out with you, though, my guy. Man, you too, bro. I appreciate you pulling up, man, rocking out with us. Enjoy the rest of your Monday afternoon, man. I got a couple mixes I got to touch up for the rest of the day, and then tomorrow I'm kind of doing like a digital resume for one of my clients. That should be pretty fun too. OG Knockout says, I got cursed out by Big Pat and his homie 2 years ago about Daniel Jones. I don't even listen anymore to them. Yeah, like Big Pat. I had Big Pat on one of the Giant Overreactions. I want to say that was like 2 years ago, but I don't know what happened with Big Pat, but like somewhere along the line, man, he said a couple of things to me where I was just like, bruh, like the disrespect, man, like shit is crazy. I just ignore everything on that front now. I try to stay out the way of the drama unless I'm kind of trolling on Twitter or something like that, making some jokes about it. Let me see. Yeah, we're in the content creator space right now. Yeah, I'm gonna let y'all talk amongst yourselves about that one. Hey, OG Knockout. I see. Who else did I see up here one time? Cookie Monster. Yeah, y'all y'all out here dropping gems. The Entertainer Talking Drugs is in the building. What's going on, fam? He says that Tim is a Debbie Downer. He blocked me for calling him out on his DJ hate. What I'll say about the DJ hate is hating on what? I always take that quote from Floyd Mayweather Jr. Like, what? It bothers me so much, y'all. Like, because the word hater comes from the hip hop community, and I don't. It really bothers me a certain way when people use that word with a player that has not done shit. That we're saying hater, like hater is reserved for guys like that, LeBron James of the world. Like when you see somebody like, LeBron James ain't shit. All right, you hating, bro. Or you see somebody say like, man, Steph Curry ain't one of the greats, man. That dude, he ain't shit. All right, we hating now. You talk about a guy like Josh Allen, he ain't never going to do nothing, man. That dude can't even get to a Super Bowl. Or you talk about Jim Kelly, that dude, man, he went to 4 Super Bowls. He ain't win one. Jim Kelly wasn't shit. That's hating. Like, I don't know, somewhere along the line, especially in football, like people took what was from the hip hop culture and then completely changed the definition of the word. Like, do y'all remember when Mano, I'm sure a lot of my New York hip hop heads know, when Mano dropped the High Haters record, right? He wasn't talking about people like throwing shade, necessary shade at people that have no accomplishments or anything like that. He was talking about like people that are throwing hate and throwing shade at people that like actually doing shit. You could blame it on the circumstances with Daniel Jones and what is happening around him and whatnot. But like, come on, man. Like, DJ hate, he doesn't like the quarterback. That's all it is. And he's fed up with this shit. I respect and I agree with Tim on that front. It's like we're going into year 6. Like I said at the beginning of this stream, if Daniel Jones was Jameis Winston, you guys wouldn't be like, man, the Jameis Winston hate. You know what I'm saying? Like, you would be like, dude's not good. And comparing Jameis Winston to Daniel Jones might be not a great comparison, to be honest. You might want to go lower tier than that. Davis Mills, like if somebody was like, yo, man, the Davis Mills hate going around the NFL, you'd be like, what the fuck? Like, to me, it just don't make no sense, man. But shout out to the Entertainer Talking Drugs. We used to have some good conversations over there on Entertainer streams, man. I think that's one of the most creative names on all of YouTube that I see in these chats. Shout out to MK5VW says, I really still don't see the point of paying Burns all that money when we still don't have a quarterback or a competitive roster. I questioned it. I did. Like, you went out there and you spent $28 million a year on an edge rusher, and this team is not really ready to win. Why was a guy like Dan Morgan with the Carolina Panthers, why was he willing to part ways with Brian Burns in a team that is in a similar position in the rebuild, similar to the New York Giants? Why didn't he want to pay him? I got my question marks about it. I think Brian Burns is a fantastic player, though. So I'm not mad at getting better players on my team. And at the end of the day, I kind of look at it like I don't want to count the pockets too crazy. You know, I want to keep my eye on the salary cap to make sure we're not in like crazy positions where we're going to be struggling with paying players and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I don't want to count the pockets too much, and I want to see the best product on the field. John says, I support any content creators who show respect to their subscribers like this channel. Talking Giants cussed me out and another guy out for no reason, unsubscribed. I love what they're doing over there with Talking Giants. I think those guys are committed. And, you know, I would suggest that, like, don't judge them in their worst moment. I think I know exactly what situation you're talking about, and I think they overreacted to a comment in the chat, and I think they kind of misinterpreted what it was. But at the end of the day, you are in charge of what you see on your timeline, right? If you don't want to see it, then you got to unsubscribe. I definitely feel you on that. But I do think that Talking Giants bring a lot of good value to the Giants community. I'm big fans of what they do. I love how they go to training camp. I will say this, though, that we're being extremely honest on some of these streams. Every time that Talking Giants has brought me on to their show, Justin Pinnock is just conveniently like unavailable. So I don't know if it's like Bobby vouching for me over there, but shout out to them, man. They brought me on their content creator show at the beginning of the year, which brought in a lot of subscribers. But I do want to talk ball with Justin Pinnock, and his opinions kind of change a good bit. But I would love for him to be there the next time that Bobby brings me on Talking Giants, because I got a couple of bones to pick with some of the takes that he's had over the years. But we'll see. I love what they're doing, though. Big fan of Talking Giants. I watch all their stuff. They did a 53-man roster prediction that just wheeled out today, I believe, and I want to check it out when I get off this stream. Y'all, the content creator, I need to just scroll past this shit. Y'all wild, man. Shout out to the gang, man. Giants Nation is in the building. Y'all know what it is, man. Keeping it 100 here, man, over here at Authentic in the Beard. So what I wanted to bring to y'all attention here, the last thing that I want to talk about here, man. And again, shout out to all of y'all, man. Y'all been rocking out with us for this whole, I didn't expect this stream to be 2 hours, man, but, you know, there it is, 2-hour stream with Authentic. Y'all know what it is. These giant overreactions definitely tend to go long. So last thing I want to talk about before we get up out of here is going over the schedule. And this one came from Bad Dog, one of the good homies here. How many games will the Giants win in 2024? Let me know what y'all predictions are. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat here one time while I pull up the schedule here as well, so we can take a look at every one of the games. Schedule is right here, and the ones with the little baby NY on them are obviously the games that are going to be home games for the New York Giants. We're going left to right, top to bottom here. So let me keep my eye on the chat as well and see where y'all are at. Let me highlight that too. MK5VW said, the only reason I could think about the Burns deal is maybe we're planning on moving Kayvon after the season. I don't know if that would make sense, because they're similar style of players, right? Like if Kayvon gets to be the player that we want him to be, he's going to look a lot like Brian Burns. So I don't know. I think that Joe Shane was just struggling in the drafts. Couldn't get the superstar that he wanted out of the draft because lack of development and lack of scouting and finding the right guys. And I think he just needed something good on his resume, needed to upgrade the roster. And this was the only way to really do it, was to go out there and bring in a guy like Brian Burns. All right, so let me see what y'all talking here. Welvin is saying that 5 wins looks reasonable. Evan says about 6 to 7 wins. Hyphen Wade said the floor is 3, the ceiling is 7. Gregory says 6 wins. Toxic Tom says 6 wins. John says 7. Say Less NYC is in the building. says 6 wins. Toxic Tom says, but we'll be competitive. Kevin the PRF says 4, and no, not with the Commanders sweep. Kevin the PRF representing them Commanders one time in the building. OG Knockout says Daniel Jones averages 6 game wins a year, so 6. I like that. That's a good way to come to that determination. Let me see what else we got. The Entertainer Talking Drugs says 6 to 7 wins, but more competitive than last year. I like that take. Say Less said 6, but we should score more points and actually have a passing game. Sebastian said worst 3, the most 7. Mike Anzarut says everyone is on the extreme when it comes to DJ and what he really is. Let me see. Everyone is on the extreme when it comes to DJ, and what he really is right in the middle. He will never be great, and he's not the worst quarterback in the league. Yeah, you could lump me into that zone right there. Like, I make it a point to say that Daniel Jones is absolutely not like a trash quarterback. I think that he can be an average quarterback in this league, but then when you see the way he fell apart in 2023, it is tough to, project it moving forward. But let's go post 2022. Daniel Jones absolutely was a decent quarterback at that point in his career. Having the ability to be able to run the read option and use his legs when things break down to get yards, I thought was fantastic. And I thought he was a pretty decent game manager with that extra capability of being able to run. But you nailed it here, Mike. Like, this is exactly what it is. A lot of people are on the extremes. I've gotten into arguments with some of my closest homies about it. They'd be like, Daniel Jones is trash. He sucks. And I'm like, I don't think that's the case. I think Daniel Jones is the kind of quarterback that you could win games with, and at his best can look like, a guy like a Teddy Bridgewater type of vibe, right? Which is kind of what you're saying here. He doesn't have the capability to possess, the skill set to be a guy who's going to be elite in this league. We know that. We're in year 6 right now, right? Like, it would be miraculous if this dude turned into an elite quarterback. And I'd say, like, the most drastic dynamic range that we've seen from a quarterback who was failing in the beginning of his career and then turned it around at the back half of his career is probably Geno Smith. He's the most recent example of a guy who looked terrible with the Jets and then sat the bench for a lengthy period of time and then got his shot in Seattle and played 5 games that first year with Russell Wilson out. And then in his second year, I think he put up 29 touchdowns. That's the largest jump you're going to see at the quarterback position. And I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be able to make that kind of jump. And we're seeing it with Geno Smith now. Kind of came back down to earth last year, and like looked like the guy who we kind of thought he was. He's still a very accurate quarterback, can do some things to win his team games. But at the end of the day, is Geno Smith an elite quarterback? I don't think so. So, Mike, this is spot on. Like, this is spot on. And I think a lot of people might look at some of my takes and think like, oh, Authentic is on the side of like, dude is straight garbage, especially with the last video that I clipped and put up, the 15 minutes of just talking about why we need to move on. But these are the kind of things of why I think we need to move on, is because if he's right in the middle and he'll never be great and he's not the worst quarterback in the league, well, that's not going to help the New York Giants. So I'm right there with you, Mike. Appreciate you pulling up with that comment because that's a really good one. Alvaro Orion is in the building one time. Says, what's up, Authentic? What's your biggest takeaway from the Jets game, if any? Our depth is an issue. Our depth is absolutely an issue. Antonio says 4-13, looking at this schedule here, and we're going to go over, each game, which ones we think are wins and whatnot. Kareem Yee says if we're terrible and fortunate, 1 to 2 wins. He said unfortunate. If we're unfortunate, 4 to 6 wins. I like that. Ricky 514 says 6 to 7 games. If Danny and Malik really click, I believe they can low-key add 1 or 2 more wins to that. Yeah, I'm with you on that too. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets is saying he's just taking the push on it. It's hard to forecast the wins with what we've seen. Let me see. Antonio says that the numbers don't say he's a middle quarterback in the league. Yeah, the numbers don't. And, I think that you do have to look around the entire NFL and look at scenarios when you factor in and try to gauge where Daniel Jones falls, of the 32 starting quarterbacks. I don't think he's 15th right now of the starting quarterbacks, but I do take the situation into consideration. Like, the guys that you would put above him have been in a better situation as far as the weapons around him, the offensive line around him. But I do think that Daniel Jones benefits from having a really good coach around him and a good offensive mind in Brian Daboll. But it's a good point, man. Numbers don't lie. MK5VW says, what 3 quarterbacks would you want us to draft next year?
I want to see it all pan out. If I had to pick right now, it'd be Shadur Sanders. I like Carson Beck a little bit. I like Donovan Smith out of Houston a good bit. And my guy, like, who I would love to see the Giants draft is Cam Ward. I'm a big fan of Cam Ward. He transferred to the U this year. I'm hoping he has a big year, and I'm hoping that somehow the Giants can find a way to land him. That's a good question right there, though. Adam Costa says he is a great backup, average starter. I agree with that. Also says you're talking Teddy. It means he a backup. Yeah, if we're talking Teddy Bridgewater, yeah, for sure. Antonio says that even in 2022, he was 13-14 in his best year. Yep. Let me see. Adam says that Daniel Jones is a backup quarterback. And says Geno Smith was a better quarterback in college. Sebastian says that the main issue with Jones is where he was drafted and who he was drafted after. Being the quarterback after Eli and having to live up to the top 6 draft pick isn't easy. He just isn't the guy. Alvaro says 13-8 is his prediction. So let me see. We've added 4 more games. I think Alvaro is predicting a Super Bowl victory for the New York Giants. I see what you did there. I see what you did right there. Shout out Alvaro one time in the building. I like that. Let's see what we got here. Torian Butler says, stop disrespecting your own quarterback. That's like telling your girl she is not it and expecting her to be loyal to you. Worst take ever. So I don't know what take Torian is talking about. I didn't choose the quarterback for the New York Giants. I chose my woman, and she's upstairs. She's fire. She's great. Love her to death. Very different circumstances here. This is like working for a boss that isn't good, and you don't necessarily choose your boss, right? And I mean, I think you can have your Daniel Jones takes left or right, however you want them, but being critical and having criticism of a quarterback is not disrespect. If you came up here to my podcast and in the comments you said, hey, man, you know, first time tuning into your podcast, man, I think your visuals could be better. I think your audio could be better. I think your takes could be better. Your deep voice kind of bothers me. It's just criticism at the end of the day. I'll take it for what it is. I'm not going to say, man, you better leave my chat with the disrespect. It's not disrespect, man. It's just being critical. And I think that when you remove emotion from being a fan, it's very different. And I've done that. I understand what it is like to apply emotion as a fan as well. And I was that a decade or 2 ago. I was like that. Like, all the football conversations I had were based upon emotions. But being critical of the quarterback position, or even saying, hey, I don't think this guy is the guy and I want him off my team, that's not disrespect at the end of the day. Daniel Jones has not put pen to paper and produced for the New York Giants. Outside of the 2022 season where he won a playoff game and, you know, ended up going out there against the Minnesota Vikings, and he lit it up. And anybody in this chat will tell you that when Daniel Jones goes out there and plays good football, I acknowledge it. I put it on a pedestal. We literally, during the 2022 season, were doing streams that were literally called Daniel Jones Flowers, where we would just, all we would talk about is how good he played. And I did that because I knew the fan base wanted it as well, right? You know, you want to keep the vibes high when your team is playing well and producing wins and headed towards a playoff victory. But Daniel Jones has not shown anything in the New York Giants uniform that he is going to be an elite quarterback. And to win Super Bowls in this day and age, you need an elite quarterback on your roster, or you need a lot of luck. And I'd rather bank on the first option there rather than banking on a lot of luck. But, you know, shout out to Torian for pulling up and rocking out with us, man. You know, it's for me, it's never no shade. It's content creation, man. Everybody has their own opinions. But saying that Daniel Jones shouldn't be the quarterback for the New York Giants for the future, if you think that's the worst take ever, I think you got a lot of ball to look at and you got a lot of ball to study. You should look at what's going on around the league right now. Toxic Tom says that DJ is the product of the team around him and the organization as a whole. He is a reflection of the environment and people around him. DJ is not the only problem. I'll never say that Daniel Jones is the only problem, which is why we consistently talk about, you know, up front, the 2 speed edge rushers and no depth on that defensive line could be an issue. It's why we talk about this cornerback and this secondary unit looking like one of the worst units in the entire NFL. It's why we've talked about the offensive line being poorest the past 5 years that I've been on YouTube. It's why we've talked about the weapons and the players that have not been drafted by the New York Giants, especially at the wide receiver position. You got to understand that Dave Gettleman went, Daniel Jones' first 3 seasons, and all he did was draft one wide receiver in Darius Slayton in the 5th round. He brought in Golden Tate, and then they hit the panic button in 2021 when they brought in Kenny Galladay. The Giants are a dysfunctional organization. Everyone should know that. I think that, and speaking on the emotions again, you'll never hear me come up here and say, listen, man, the reason why the New York Giants are a bad team is because Daniel Jones is a bad quarterback. I'll never say that. I'll never say that. And like I said, Daniel Jones is he's an average quarterback that can go out there and he can win some games for you. But I think that the fans who are like, and Toxic is not even a Giants fan, I don't think, but the fans who are in the Giants fan base that continuously be like, you can't blame it all on DJ. You don't want to be saying that about your quarterback. You want to be saying like, man, look, everything around that guy is wrong, and we need to put the pieces around him. He has already shown us that, like, if you put a good offensive line around him, he could take this team to a Super Bowl. And the quarterback that comes to mind when I say that is Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, drafted in 2020. They brought in a wide receiver 1, I guess, with him at the same exact time in T. Higgins that they drafted in that same draft. And his first year was not all that good. But you could see that Joe Burrow was a baller from year 1. And you could see that that offensive line had major issues coming out of 2020. They went into the 2021 draft, and they did not draft any offensive linemen. Instead, they drafted Jamar Chase with their first-round selection, and people were like, what? With all the offensive line issues that got Joe Burrow's ACL torn, you're going to go out here and draft another wide receiver. You already have T. Higgins on the roster. People hated that pick, right? And then they went to the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow shows you that things do not have to be completely perfect around him. Daniel Jones has shown you that things do have to kind of be perfect around him for him to be a quarterback that's going to be making that push towards trying to get to a Super Bowl. Kevin at PRF says, I'd like this overreaction poll. If the Giants move on from Daniel Jones, he will never be an opening starter the rest of his career. I wouldn't rule that out. I would think that would be an overreaction. Kareem Yee says that Alex Smith was similar. Yeah, Alex Smith is like literally the only example post like 2000 of a quarterback that struggled his first 5 years. And then look what you got in the end. You got a guy that was still scared to take deep shots down the field, had to shrink his game down to be a pretty much check down artist and an intermediate type of quarterback to be able to be successful. You did see him kind of air it out a little bit there in his last year with Kansas City with Tyreek Hill, but ultimately he was not good enough to get them over the hump to win a Super Bowl. So the biggest example that Giants fans use with Alex Smith was a guy that the Kansas City Chiefs looked at like, hey, we need to go get our real franchise quarterback. Jonathan Ryan is in the building. Shout out Jonathan Ryan one time. Jonathan says, are we all willing to sacrifice this season to get a new quarterback? Just asking because I'm not sure, and I love the Giants. Listen, for me, the Giants could go out there and lose every game. It's not going to hurt me one way or the other this season. You know, I always say that our conditioning has been conditioned. And that goes for the fans who constantly think, oh, man, maybe this is the year. Daniel Jones is going to snap out of it and have some great season. I hope that's the case. And for those of us that have been watching the losing ways of the New York Giants for the last, we'll say, decade, not winning more than 6 games in 5 of the last 6 seasons, our condition has been conditioned as well. We now do not expect a lot of wins. So we go into these seasons and we don't want to be let down. And we take our emotion and we completely remove it and just put it to the side. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. Y'all know how it's been over here. Even in 2022, I did that a little bit. And then they started winning games. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Get off to that 7-1 start. And then, it ends with a playoff victory and then, a divisional loss to the Eagles. It was nonetheless a really good year. And, from a first-year head coach, I think we couldn't ask for anything more. Let me see. Oh, Antonio says you like Cam Ward. And then he says, fuck no, Authentic. That kid can't read defenses. Everybody got their opinion. I love Cam Ward's skill set. They said that Anthony Richardson couldn't read defenses either, and they're still saying it till this day. I would take him as the quarterback on the Giants right now. These guys are still young prospects. Don't forget it. Don't forget that. And I think that Brian Dable could mold a guy like Cam Ward in a major way. And I'm hoping he has a big year this year. I'm definitely hoping he has a big year. Gregory asked about Archie Manning. I mean, dude hasn't even played yet. You got Ewers over there. I'll focus on it when it becomes a thing. Antonio said, laughing my ass off, I chose my woman. Yeah, bro, you know what it is. Like, I did not choose Daniel Jones to be the quarterback for the New York Giants, and it's out of my power. So, like, making that comparison to, like, your girlfriend or your wife or whatever, it's like, what do you mean? Like, you are in control of the relationships that you are in. I can sit up here and say, hey, man, I could not be a New York Giants fan, but I don't think that's an option at this point. Yeah, shout out Antonio, though. All right, I just want to scroll down and catch up. I see a lot going on in the chat and whatnot. A lot of people talking about the quarterback situation and the wins. So before I get y'all up out of here, and we'll just do a quick 5 minutes on this, and then we'll get y'all out of here, man. Shout out to all y'all that pulled up, rocked out over 2 hours. Like, these streams just been lengthy streams, man. We've been running marathons, man. Shout out to Nipsey Hussle one time. It's definitely been a marathon. And we did 6 hours on the last Giant Overreaction, and we're pushing 3 here now. So it's been wild, man. And just salute to all of y'all, man, for giving y'all opinions and bringing your perspective to the table. Everyone who sent in super chats earlier, from Bluegrass Picker to Independent Outsider to Forever Toxic, Marquez Hardison, my homie MH, and to Joe Winograd one time for sending in super chats. Shout out to all of y'all, man. I don't be watching content for 2 and 3 hours, and it's dope that y'all sit up here and rock out with me for this long. But let's kind of go over this schedule a little bit here. So, and I'll get this one from Michael Marshall. I don't see his name too much in the building. So Michael Marshall says thoughts on Evan Neal after this last preseason game. Same as it was last year. Terrible, getting beat off the edge, complaining about his ankle and the injury got rolled up on a little bit. It's tough to root for Evan Neal, man. I'm giving him this last season, but it seems like the Giants even, are making the right move and, going with Jermaine Illuminor at the right tackle position. I think that's important. I'm just looking at the beef in the chat right now going on between Cookie Monster and the BK NYC 85. You guys know I got to address this one a little bit. The woke crowd just wants their black quarterback. I mean, that's just the most wildest shit, man. That is a crazy statement right there, yo. Damn. That's like when you just are at a loss of words, bro, like that one is wild. Like, I think people just want a good quarterback. A lot of good quarterbacks in the NFL are black quarterbacks. I don't care if the quarterback's black, Asian, Hispanic. He could be from Zimbabwe. He could be from Australia. He could be from Mars. I don't care. I just want a quarterback that does the things that good quarterbacks do. I think that's where I'm at on that one. I see Cookie Monster is not feeling that. Yo, Real Cold G said the woke crowd. Yo, that's a wild one right there. Yeah, that's a wild one. That's why I don't do the politics stuff, man. I stay out of that. I just stay out of that. Yo, but everybody's welcome here, man. Y'all know what it is, man. Like, come here, show up, talk ball, try to be respectful, y'all. Y'all know what it is, man. We trying to build a community where people can express even an opinion that is outlandish, and we won't tiptoe from talking about those conversations. I think it's something to be had. Maybe we'll do a whole stream about that one day, about, the woke crowd and the black quarterbacks and, why the New York Giants haven't drafted a black quarterback and all that stuff. We talk about it sometimes on Twitter Spaces, and I think that's one of those topics that a lot of other content creators kind of shy away from. And I think that's maybe something we should bring up for sure. So appreciate the homie for at least, bringing that thought to the conversation here. But let's talk about the schedule here. Looking at week 1 here, going up against the Minnesota Vikings, you're going to have Sam Darnold at the quarterback position, Justin Jefferson at wide receiver. They're going to have no TJ Hawkinson. And then I think Jordan Addison's going to be suspended for the beginning of the season. So I think that kind of gives us a little bit of a lane to win a game. So let me I'm gonna tally this up on the phone. Actually, I can do it right here on these notes right here on the side, just so we can look at what games could possibly be victories, right? Get this right here too. Let's see. All right, so Minnesota Vikings, I look at that like that could be a victory. I really think that could be a game that the Giants win. Are they going to win it? I don't know. I think that the firepower of that offense is something to keep in mind. They brought in Aaron Jones at running back. That could definitely help them. It's going to be a game where I think the New York Giants are going to probably have to score around 20 points to be able to win that game. Now, when you get to week 2 against the Washington Commanders, that game is at FedEx Field. I will be at that game, tailgating with the crew, with the gang, if y'all want to pull up to that one. As much as I want that game to be a victory, I think that the Giants and the Commanders are going to split this year. So I'm going to give the victory to the Washington Commanders there in week 2. The Browns game is another tough one. They are going to be without Nick Chubb for the first couple of games of the season. They have shown that they can run the ball without Nick Chubb. They do have good depth at the running back position. You don't know what you're going to get from Deshaun Watson. I think it'll be a low-scoring type of game, especially with the way that the Browns' defense is. They got a great defense over there. Denzel Ward at the cornerback position, Myles Garrett, just talent all over that defense. I'm looking at that one that it's likely going to be a loss. The Cowboys' first matchup, no Deron Bland. That helps us. If we're going to get a win against the Dallas Cowboys, I think it'll be that game at Dallas. But I'm not counting that one as a W. Seattle Seahawks, that's going to be a tough one. I think it's going to be a coaching matchup. They got their new coach from the Baltimore Ravens over there going up against Brian Daboll in this offense. I think whoever coaches that game better is going to win that game. I'm looking at the Seattle Seahawks as the victor there. Bengals, I'm looking at that as a W for the Bengals. Unless the Bengals have some kind of strange setback this year, I think the Bengals will come in and beat us at MetLife. I'm looking at those Philly games. I think that's a sweep from the Philadelphia Eagles this year. People are kind of sleeping on the Philadelphia Eagles, if you ask me. I mean, they just brought in Jahan Dotson. They spent a first-round pick and a second-round pick on 2 new cornerbacks over there, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, both regarded as the best cornerbacks possibly in this draft. They brought back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You got Cam Jurgens from Nebraska taking over at the center position for Jason Kelce. I think they're not going to miss a beat. I think that, you know, the losing that you saw at the back half of the season last year, I think they lost 5 of their last 6 games before getting into the playoffs. I think they'll clean that up. Bringing in Kellen Moore at the offensive coordinator position should really help Jalen Hurts and his, maturation to developing and becoming one of the top 10 quarterbacks again. I'll say a lot of people kind of took him out of the top 10 after his, mediocre season last year on his terms, I'll say. Still put up a ton of touchdowns on a year. But I do think Kellen Moore is going to bring a bit of a more improvisation to that offense, more hot routes, which they had no hot routes last year implemented into that offense. They didn't have hot routes when Shane Steichen was calling plays over there either. And just relying on Jalen Hurts to kind of just run and be able to do things with his legs to buy time when teams decided to blitz them. And when you look at the back half of the season in 2023 for the Eagles, that's how teams beat them. Jalen Hurts was the most blitzed quarterback of any quarterback last year in the entire National Football League, and teams found out that when under pressure, he was not as good of a quarterback, and they decided to just dial up those blitzes time in and time again. I think they're going to be much better this year. Bringing in Jahan Dotson, Saquon Barkley, if he can stay healthy, is going to have a big year. I mean, I think Saquon goes over 1,200 yards, no problem. So I'm looking at the Philadelphia Eagles as the division winner. This year, it won't be back-to-back because the Dallas Cowboys won the division last year. But I'm looking at the Eagles getting back to their 2022 form and really making a push for the Super Bowl. I really think to represent the NFC, it's either going to be the Philadelphia Eagles or the San Francisco 49ers. I think those are the 2 teams that are going to really make a good run this year. So I got the Eagles for the sweep. The Steelers game, I think that's a really tough one. You know, Mike Tomlin, always a coach that's over 500, but they do lose games throughout the year where you're like, dang, how did they lose to that team? And I do think that the Giants got a good shot at beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the quarterback play over there has not been great throughout the preseason. They brought in Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. You saw George Pickens go over 1,000 yards last year, and I was talking to the Beard about this in the car, man. Like, he was like, should I draft George Pickens in this fantasy league? And I'm like, man, that dude's a stud, man. You got to think, with Kenny Pickett at quarterback for 12 games, Kenny Pickett threw 7 passing touchdowns last season, and George Pickens had 6 touchdowns, and he put up over 1,000 yards with Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph playing quarterback over there. So I expect a guy like George Pickens to make a claim for a top 15 spot as far as the top wide receivers go in this league. That dude is very talented. He reminds me a lot of Malik Neighbors, but just less polished and a little bit more like a guy who can make those spectacular type of plays. Not that Malik Neighbors can't make those, but I think those 2 guys are very similar skill set type of wide receivers. And what's very interesting about it is George Pickens was right there on the board for us when we drafted Wan'Dale Robinson. And I just think, like, You know, George Pickens doesn't fit the Giants' way, the our way type of shit. And he's more of a hothead. You saw him watching, the draft at home with the Pooh Shiesty Scully pulled over his face and whatnot, looking like he's getting ready to go rob somebody and go pull a caper. And, he doesn't fit the mold, but that would have been really cool to have a guy like Malik Neighbors and George Pickens on this roster. I'd really be looking at this wide receiver room like, damn. And just to throw this out there, I love this point from Toxic Tom. He says, I don't trust Arthur Smith as the OC. Yeah, that's something not to trust. Arthur Smith struggled in Atlanta. I'll never forget this game against the Washington Commanders. It was, I wanted the Commanders to lose this game. It was early on in the year. It was like around week 6. And I'm looking at the Giants like, we need to get back on track, and I want the Commanders to lose this game. And Marcus Mariota, it was 2 seasons ago. And Marcus Mariota's playing quarterback. They're at the goal line going against the Commanders to win the game. A touchdown wins it. And they're at the 2-yard line, and Arthur Smith decides to dial up a shotgun pass play. The ball gets batted up at the line of scrimmage, interception for the Commanders. I was in my feelings, man. It was the most heated I was throughout that entire season. So I'm with you. I don't trust Arthur Smith either. DeIlla says that Russ fed the ball to Cortland Sutton. He'll do the same to Pickens. Yep, I agree with you on that. And I do think that Arthur Smith is better suited as a OC rather than a head coach. Now, when you get to the Commanders again, I think that the Giants will beat the Commanders at MetLife. Going up against the Panthers, I think it's going to be a pretty tough game because the Panthers have improved a little bit. I'm not saying it's a game that the Giants will automatically win, but I do think the Giants will get the victory in that game. That game's going to be in Germany, I believe, this year. Then you got the Bucs. We got that stretch right there. I think that the Giants could go on a 3-game winning streak here against the Steelers, the Commanders, and the Panthers. I think that's where I see a 3-game winning streak, possibly a 4-game winning streak if you look at the Bucs. And that's me thinking a little bit optimistic, but I do have the Bucs beating the Giants. That game is going to be in Tampa Bay. Oh, I'm sorry, that game's going to be at MetLife. But I do have the Bucs winning that game. I think they're much more, their roster is just much more ready to come in and beat a team like the Giants. Cowboys, I think. Okay, so the first game is actually at MetLife. The second one is in Jerry World. I think the Cowboys are going to sweep the Giants. All in all, I think the Giants could get to 2 divisional wins, maybe a sneaky win against the Cowboys. Like, let's say you get to around that time when you play the Cowboys, or even maybe in week 4 when you play them without Deron Bland, and maybe you get lucky and get another injury, maybe an offensive lineman or maybe a guy like Brandon Cooks, and it makes our game plan defensively a little bit more simplified. I think you could win one against the Cowboys. Not banking on it, though. I got us beating the Saints. If there's any game that I look at on the schedule that I look at as an automatic dub, I think it's that Saints game. It's not to say we're going to win it, but to me, it's the most likely win on the schedule. And then the last 4 weeks of the season, going up against the Ravens, Falcons, Colts, and Eagles, I look at those as 4 straight losses for the Giants. So for me, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wins. That's where a possible 6, 5 and a possible 6 if the Giants can beat either the Bucs. I think the Atlanta Falcons are a team that can be beat. They got a lot of nice pieces over there with Kirk Cousins coming in at quarterback, Drake London at the wide receiver position. They definitely brought in some moves on the defensive side of the ball with Judon, and they just signed that cornerback as well. Falcons are a beatable team, though. When I look at the wide receiver depth, it's not that great with Darnell Mooney at the number 2. It's not one that I'm going to book as a win, but it's one that I think that they can compete. Same way I feel about the Indianapolis Colts, but man, like the Colts, if Anthony Richardson can get things kind of dialed in and Adonai Mitchell, who looked great in that preseason game, can be a factor with Michael Pittman out there, and then getting Jonathan Taylor back to his form, from 2021 or whatever that was when he was the leader in rushing in the NFL. I think that the Colts can be a fringe playoff team for sure. But all in all, I see the Giants finishing the year about 5-12, maybe a good 6-11 again. Let me tap back in with you all in the chat here and see what's going on. Adam says the Falcons are going to stomp us. I think people are higher on the Falcons than I am. People are saying that roster is Super Bowl ready, and I don't see how you Super Bowl ready with Darnell Mooney at number 2. I don't see it. But I do think the Falcons are going to compete for the division this year. They were there all the way down the stretch last year. And that the NFC South division is one of the more poor divisions, but I think they'll compete with the Bucs in it this year. Toxic Tom says that Dallas playing down to their competition, especially late in the year and losing. No, that doesn't sound like us. I sense a little sarcasm. I'm definitely digging that right there. DeIlla says, think I gave us 5 to 6 wins in my schedule breakdown, had us rattling Cousins and pulling off the upset against the Falcons, thinking optimistically. Yeah, I think it's a possible chance. You know, you could beat the Falcons, you could beat the Saints. But then, like, what if you get surprised by a team like the Panthers? Got to win that week 1 game. That week 1 game. If you don't win that week 1 game, whoever said 2-15, that's really a possibility. It really is. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's definitely a possibility. DeIlla says we should beat the Saints. That team is trash. Good defense, but there's nothing on that team outside of Olave. I'm scared of. Kamara is tailing off. Yeah, Kamara's getting older, and yeah, he's not that same threat at the running back position. Zeke Anderson said 4 wins. Adam Costa said 5-12. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets says we felt that about the Saints last season. Yeah, and I think, you know, that's the thing. You got to consider injuries and whatnot. Tommy DeVito was at the quarterback position against the Saints. And from what I remember, I think it was a pretty close game. And we felt that way about the Raiders, too. And the Raiders blew the socks off the New York Giants last year. So, yeah, you never really know. But I do think it's a good exercise to go through the schedule because even if some of these teams are better and some of these teams are worse, which is likely to happen, I think you can at least kind of get to a round where, you know, an approximation of how many wins the Giants would be looking at. And this year, you know, especially in my chat here, like, it's been the most, like, I'll say, trying to think of the right word for this, but, like, people are thinking much more realistic now. You know, like, you're not seeing no 11-6 in the chat. You're not seeing no, like, 10-7 in the chat. The expectations are low for the Giants. Shout out to Keith Wilson Jr. one time in the building, dropping in with that $4.99 super chat, says, salute, OG. Stay tuned for my Canes this Saturday. I can't wait, bro. Our future NY quarterback got some business to attend to in the swamp. Ayo, FSU, who took a upsetting loss this past weekend. Who was they playing? They was playing, I can't remember who they was playing, damn, but they took a major upset. They was number 10 coming in to this season and whatnot, and they ended up taking that L to an unranked team. I can't remember who they was playing. I don't know why. It's escaping me. Oh, Georgia Tech. It was Georgia Tech, yeah. Took that L. So, yeah, that's good news for you, man. Shout out to you, Keith, man. I appreciate you supporting the channel. And I'm going to be watching every one of y'all games this year. Every last one of them, man. Love Cam Ward. Can't wait to see what he can do, you know, in a new atmosphere, especially. Let me see what else we got. Bleed Blue says, how do we think the Giants win 5 games when last season it was tougher and we had our 2-3 quarterbacks and injuries? I think this schedule this year is actually a little bit tougher than last year, but very similar. And you got to think about this. That quarterback 2 and quarterback 3 came in and played better football than the starter. I saw this running around on social media today that if Daniel Jones would have started the whole entire season, the Giants would have lost more games. You got to factor that in, too. Daniel Jones went out there and put up 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1 fumble in 6 appearances. Tommy DeVito had a better year than Daniel Jones. Tyrod Taylor absolutely had a better year than Daniel Jones. And injuries have been a thing. He's been injured 4 out of his 5 seasons. So if you had to bet money right now, if you had to go to Vegas right now and bet money, is Daniel Jones going to play 17 games this year? Where do you think your money would go? Towards him not playing 17 games or towards him playing 17 games? I know where my money would go. Nova Nebula says, 5 is my absolute lowest, but I think it would take everything going wrong. I got them winning 6 to 8, taking 7 to be safe. I love that. That's a good, rational take right there. I do think it can get to 7 wins. You know, you never know. The Giants mess around, beat a team like the Bengals, beat a team like the Seahawks, maybe the Browns, Falcons, Colts are teams. Maybe you sneak one against Dallas or Philly. And yeah, there you go. You get to your 7 or your 8 wins. I'm right there with you. Let me see what else we got. DeIlla says, I think Cleveland is going to be an ugly game. Whoever is the best on the ground and gets a turnover here and there will win it. Yeah, I like that too. Shout out to the homie 1T in the building. He said 1-16 this year, max. and gave you the 3 Caucasian biceps on him one time. Shout out my guy 1T, man, hosting those outer spaces on Twitter, man. Definitely always a great time. Love talking ball with 1T. That's one of the GOATs when it comes to talking football. That dude knows his stuff. 1T could start a podcast. He know ball for sure, man. I can't wait to kick it with 1T sometime soon, man, and get to turn up, do a little partying, bro, because, yeah, I already know 1T know the vibes one time. Kevin the PRF says, I think that will be a key must-win for the Falcons that week and will get their best. Conversely, week 18, I feel Philly won't be playing for anything and might be a win. Yeah, and we got that last season, even with Philly playing for the division, ended up getting blown out in that first half, and they ended up resting their starters, and that's the last time the Giants beat the Eagles. It was definitely a good win for us for a little bit of morale in that locker room. Toxic Tom says, no more hopium. I'm with you on that, brother. Bleed Blue says, last year we had crazy injuries, 2 to 3 on quarterbacks, won 6 games. We got better, easier schedule, and now we're winning 5 games. It's not insane. It's not insane. I mean, look at the chat, bro. No one is saying 10 wins. No one is saying it's impossible to get to that point either, but you got to just think, and I kind of addressed this one in your last post. I see you just kind of corrected a couple of things there. Look at the Giants last year and what they did at the quarterback position with Tyrod Taylor in the game. 17 of the 85 sacks were Tyrod Taylor. Daniel Jones had 30, and Tommy DeVito had the rest. And Tyrod Taylor took the most dropbacks of any quarterback on the Giants roster, and we lost him. He was the best quarterback on this roster, and now he's a New York Jet. You bring in Drew Lock, Daniel Jones with the health. There's just so many factors that I think it's more insane to think that the Giants are going to be a 10-plus win team than it is to think that they're going to be a 5-win team. Sebastian said thoughts on Jalen Milroe. I like him. I like his running capability. It's going to be good to see him, another year in that system. The way that they lost their game, the last game of the season to get to the championship, I believe it was, on the goal line. I love the play call, too. Ran a quarterback draw, and he ended up getting stopped. I thought he was one of the better players on their offense, and I'm hoping he has a big year. He's Cam Ward-ish to me as well. They have similar playing styles to me, where Milroe's a little bit of more of a tougher runner, I feel like. But I'm a fan. Ben Harris is in the building, says, we had a tough schedule to start last year. It appears easier this season to start. That's where I'll agree with you. It's definitely easier to start the year because you got 2 games that are winnable games, whereas when you look at last year, what was it? It was Dallas week 1. We did have the Cardinals, I think, week 2, but then we went through the ringery when we saw teams like Seattle, Miami, Buffalo, and the Jets. We were looking at that early on in the year as a team that was going to have Aaron Rodgers on the field, and that was another tough one, we thought. So I agree with you there. But then weeks 3 through 7 on the Giants' schedule is definitely a bit tougher there. When you look at the Browns, the Cowboys, the Seahawks, the Bengals, and the Philadelphia Eagles, one could say that those could all be losses. But I agree with you on that, Ben. And then he also says record after 2 weeks says a lot. Almost all teams to start 0-2 missed the playoffs. Only 2 in the past 2 seasons. Yeah, that's a great point. Your percentage of your chances of getting to the playoffs when you start off 0-2 is like under 4%. So, yeah, you want to get off to a good start. That's how we ended up in the playoffs in 2022. We ended up getting out to that great early lead, and took advantage of a weaker schedule, won 7 games out of our first 8, and that's how we ended up getting to our first playoff victory since 2011. So, love this take, Ben. This is very even keel type of take here. Like, if you can get off to that good start, it could change the whole narrative of how the whole rest of the season goes. Maybe you get out, to 1-1 or 2-0, and then you could shock a team like the Cleveland Browns or the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm right there with you. Tony, Giants fan, says, your thoughts on KJ Cloyd. Dude was all over the field this past game, this preseason game. I think he had 11 tackles, and they were just saying his name on the broadcast a ton, and I think he's a guy that you have to keep around. He was under the radar for me entering the final week of preseason here, and I really didn't hear his name until that game, so it was good to see him out there. You saw a guy who was just all over the field and very productive doing it, so I want to keep him around. You got Deontay Johnson dealing with the ankle injury. It'd be nice to keep some guys, as far as inside linebackers as depth pieces on this roster, whether it be the practice squad or if he can make it to the 53. But I'm a fan. For now, I'm a fan, for sure. Nova Nebula said the Caucasian biceps. Yeah, you already know. Welvin says that if you could take any 3 players from the NFL and place them on the Giants to compete now, who would it be? Like, any 3 players to bring in right now? I would go Tyreek Hill. I would go Could damn near go like all Kansas City Chiefs and Tyreek Hill, right? I would go Tyreek Hill. Like, how could I not say Patrick Mahomes? I'd go Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes. Would I go defensive side of the ball? Yeah. And I would go Derek Stingley. That's where I would go with that. Bring in another cornerback who could compete for cornerback one. I'd bring in a solid tight end position at Travis Kelce or like a George Kittle. And then, I mean, franchise quarterback is a no-brainer. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver. Pick 3 of those, 4 or 5, whatever. One of those guys. Let me see what else we got. Yeah, we about to hit that 3-hour mark here one time. Ooh, Ben Harris says Josh Allen, been proven. Josh Allen, because it's been proven to work with Dable. That's a good one. I think Josh Allen's the second best quarterback in the NFL. Like, that dude has just been, they brought in Stephon Diggs, and it helped, but they had no running game for so long, and he just continues to put that team on his back. I hope they can build around him and get him to a Super Bowl, but it's a good point there. So as far as schedule, yeah, I got 5 wins. I think y'all are fairly close in assessment where I'm at, man. Big shout out to all of y'all, man. This stream was a vibe. I didn't think we were going 3 hours today. I thought it was going to be an hour, like I said, man. But salute to all of y'all for rocking out with me over here, man, on Authentic in the Beard. This was a vibe. This was a good show, man. I love the overreactions. Split the room on a couple of these here. And, yeah, I love all the opinions that everybody brought to the table. We will be here doing our previews coming up in about 2 weeks. Also, we're going to be doing the stat predictions that we normally do throughout the year. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I want to cook up another pre-recorded video. And, I've been talking about this one, comparing the 3 rebuilds going across the NFL with the Chicago Bears, who, man, their Hard Knocks has been a little boring. I got to keep it real. It just ain't been it. I loved our version of it, though. But comparing the Chicago Bears, the Tennessee Titans, and the New York Giants, I think it'll be really good to look at where Ryan Poles is in comparison to Rand Carthen and Joe Shane as general managers and how the rebuilds are going with that team or with those 3 teams. Again, man, big salute to all of y'all for pulling up. Giants Nation was absolutely in the building today, man. Salute to all of y'all. Y'all know how we end every stream over here, man. Keep living those dreams. Keep raising the bar, because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. Rest in peace to the podcast GOAT, Mr. Combat Jack himself. And that's a wrap, y'all. Enjoy the rest of y'all Monday afternoon, man. If you at work, speedy day for you for the rest of this evening. And I will definitely catch y'all on the next stream, man. Again, big shout out to the gang. Let me see some biceps in the chat before we get out of here. I already saw John got to it. My homie No Mets, No Nets, No Jets got to it. Salute to all of y'all that stayed through this whole entire 3-hour stream, man. We definitely rocked out on this one. I see Gregory representing them Cowboys, says thanks, Authentic. Another great show. Later to everyone. Salute to all of y'all, man. Bleed Blue says Barkley is not all that, man. Might be a little bit behind in the stream. Barkley should have a good year, though, man. Finally behind a good offensive line. But again, man, appreciate y'all. Y'all know we can't do this without y'all, man. And big shout out to the gang. Everybody represented from the beginning and the onset of this stream. And I'll catch y'all on the next one, man. I'm going to be cooking up some videos. I'll be on Bleacher Report in the middle of the week, and I'll be on Bleacher Report throughout all of September. Make sure you go over there and subscribe to what I'm doing. So let me get this off as we do this. And I'll catch y'all on the next stream, man. Again, keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams, because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. Y'all be good, man. Peace.
Spike don't care.